Chapter 1708. The Celestial Emperor's Wedding. The true dragon descended, the Qilin appeared, the divine turtle came, and the Luan and Phoenix cried together. This scene was too dazzling. The various clans of the monster race have arrived to contribute to the wedding of the Celestial Emperor. Everyone understood in their hearts that these were the demon emperors of the desolate mountains. Even if they weren't willing to submit to anyone and retreated to the desolate mountains, the situation in the immortal realms has already been established. The Heaven Empyrean unified the immortal realms, and on the day of his grand wedding, the demon races had no choice but to come and offer their congratulations. Also, they were willing to do so. The demons of the desolate mountains were also worried that Qin Wenyan would point his sword at the desolate mountains. The immortal Qinbian Gate and the Jiang clan of the Heavenly Talisman realm was a lesson to be learned from. If Qin Wenyan really sent troops to the desolate mountain range, it would be a calamity for the demons. Today, they came here to express their stance. Even if they didn't say it explicitly, if the Heaven Empyrean really gave the order, they would definitely show up. Right now, the Immortal Region, the Myriad Devil Islands, and the desolate 10,000 mountain range had officially merged into one, listening to the Heaven Empyrean's orders. Standing on the back of the golden-winged rock, the Celestial Emperor truly carried the momentum of unifying the world as he married the princess of the Evergreen Kingdom. The Southern Phoenix matriarch nodded to the many people seated below. After which, everyone walked up the ceremonial stage. Fan Le held his head high as he walked up, exuding an air of arrogance. Ouyang Guangsheng drew in a deep breath. He, who wasn't afraid of anything, was actually extremely nervous at this moment. Qin Wentian's appearance was so brilliant that they were all deeply shocked. This was the embodiment of Qin Wentian's status today. Qin Chuan's face was flushed, and his eyes were red. He looked at Qin Wentian, surrounded by holy beasts. His steps were heavy as he walked up the dais. Next to him, Chongqing the Great patted him on the shoulder, and then nodded to Qin Chuan with a smile. Qin Chuan smiled back at Chongqing the Great, nodded, and continued to walk up the dais. Mustang, Luo Huan and those from the Emperor Star Academy all had smiles on their faces. Yi Qingyun, Yiling Shuang, Lin Shuai and the others from the Battle Sword sect were all extremely agitated. The Medicine Sovereign, the people of the Mo residence, and the others all felt anticipation in their hearts. They didn't know if Qingqing would appear in this incomparably resplendent scene today. Qin Yao could no longer hold back her tears as they flowed down her cheeks. The instant Qin Wenyan appeared, she had already started crying. Tears streamed down her cheeks as they walked up the ceremonial stage, staring in the direction of Qin Wenyan. Present. The Southern Phoenix matriarch spoke. At this moment, the experts from the Thunder God Hall, Chaotic Sky Sect, Snowdrift Sage Hall, Nibble Sky Sacred Cult and the other peak powers who submitted to the Jiang clan and the immortal Qinbian Gate all walked out. Every one of them was a hegemon of a region, a sect leader or a hall lord. They held incomparably valuable gift boxes in their hands and carried their treasures as they walked towards the stage. At this moment, their hearts were incomparably heavy, but they had no choice but to do this. What they wanted to present were the ultimate treasures of their sects, the most precious cultivation arts and cultivation arts. These would be the betrothal gifts that Qin Wentian gave to the Evergreen Kingdom. The Heaven Empyrean had ordered them to present these treasures to the Chongqing the Great. However, who would dare to say a single word of objection? The victor was king and the loser was vilified. In the battle of the Evergreen Kingdom, the Azure Mystic Immortal Sect, Qin Wenyan, the Immortal Qinbian Gate and the Jiang clan. These three powers represented three different camps. Qin Wenyan was victorious and unified the world. Even if Qin Wentian wanted to destroy them, no one would say anything. After all, they chose to stand on the opposing side of Qin Wenyan. At the moment when Qin Wenyan unified the world, they were all incomparably terrified. After that, the Heaven Empyrean's decree came. Although it was a humiliation, it also meant that they wouldn't be destroyed. Were they happy or worried about this? They didn't know what to say. They walked step by step towards the stairs below the ceremonial platform. A supreme immortal emperor from the Yaotai Immortal Palace presented the treasures to the people around Chongqing the Great. Chongqing the Great smiled and accepted it. All of this was what he ought to do. Back then when Qin Wendian was weak, he didn't stop Qin Wendian and Qing Er from being together. The two of them experienced life and death together with many trials and tribulations. Now that Qin Wendian finally unified the world and married Qing Er, he naturally would accept a mere betrothal gift. Everyone only had envy and blessings. They understood that what Chongqing the Great and the Evergreen Kingdom would obtain wasn't just this. Qin Wendian could give them even more. Many people from the other peak powers only hated the fact that there weren't any women in their peak powers that could capture Qin Wendian's heart. Among the crowd from the Snowdrift Sage Hall, Chu Qingyi stood among them. Her heart was filled with melancholy as tears flowed down her face. The people beside her stared at Chu Qingyi as they sighed in their hearts. Back then, they hated themselves for not listening to her words and befriending Qin Wendian. Su Qingyao was also among the crowd. Her parents smiled at her. Back then, why didn't you make the Heaven Empyrean fall in love with you? Su Qingyao rolled her eyes and glared at her parents. However, she felt a sense of disappointment in her heart. After her experiences in the city of ancient emperors, she already had a favorable impression of the saber-sword immortal king. He was simply too outstanding, there was no one more dazzling than him. However, the him today was even more dazzling compared to the him in the city of ancient emperors. He ascended to the peak and was about to marry the woman he loved. Lin Xian squeezed to the front of the crowd. She had arrived very early, and when she stared at the figure in the air, her tears flowed unceasingly. She thought back to the past. In the particle world, the saber-sword immortal king protected her. At that time, she once thought that from now on, she would never have feelings for any other man. Xian, the handsome young man who came together with her, called out. He felt some heartache in his heart as he spoke. I'm sorry, I can't give you such a wedding. He thought that Lin Xian was reminiscing about the past and was envious of Evergreen Qing. Such a scene would surely cause any woman's heart to be moved. However, he couldn't help but to admit that he couldn't give her such a wedding. In this world, other than Qin Wendian, who else could do so? I'm sorry, I can't agree to be together with you. Lin Xian suddenly spoke, her words causing the young man's heart to tremble. He stared fixedly at Lin Xian. Why? Because I have no way to lie to my heart. Lin Xian was still staring at the white-robed figure in the air. How good would it be if she hadn't met him in the past? If that was the case, she wouldn't be unable to accommodate anyone else. Just because you saw the magnificent scene today? The young man felt an incomparable sense of disappointment in his heart. So it turned out that she also loved vanity? He naturally understood that given Lin Xian's beauty, if she truly desired vanity, she would definitely have a chance to marry an extraordinary character. We've known each other for so long. Why do you think I'm such a person? Lin Xian shook her head, tears still streaming down her cheeks. What? The young man asked again. Lin Xian turned her gaze over, staring at the young man. She suddenly smiled, a smile so beautiful. She pointed to Qin Wendian in the air. If I told you that I was acquainted with him when he was still in the particle world, would you believe me? If I told you that I was once captured by someone and he stood in front of me, willing to use his life to exchange for mine, would you believe me? Ask me why, because after I fell in love with him, my heart could no longer contain anyone else. The young man stared at the smile on Lin Xian's face. He stood there in a daze, feeling an intense pain in his heart. Was such a reason enough? Of course it was. Could it be that he felt that he was more outstanding than the Heaven Empyrean? He finally understood why Lin Xian wanted to come. Because the person she deeply loved in her heart was the Heaven Empyrean. How could she contain anyone else? Naturally, this included him. Turning around, he walked towards the crowd. His back view was incomparably lonely. As for Lin Xian, her tears grew even more sorrowful, causing the hearts of the people in the surroundings to shatter. Such a beauty crying so much. Who could she fall in love with? Who wouldn't be moved? However, the person she fell in love with was the Heaven Empyrean. In this world, there was only a single Heaven Empyrean. At this moment, 7-colored auspicious clouds appeared above the ceremonial stage as the cry of a phoenix drifted over. In the air, a flawlessly beautiful phoenix appeared. This was a true phoenix, surrounded by many other birds. On the back of the phoenix, Qing'e was clad in an incomparably resplendent robe, resembling the most beautiful wedding dress in the world. She had a phoenix crown on her head, resembling a goddess. Bathed in 7-colored light, she descended from the air and slowly landed on the stage. Her beautiful eyes flickered with a smile, like the happiest smile in the world. Today, there were too many supreme beauties here, but not a single one was able to steal away her radiance. She was the female lead today. She was holy and beautiful, akin to a flawless goddess. Below, Changqing the Great, Fairy Qingmei and the others stared at Qing'e. The eyes of the evergreen emperor were red, while Fairy Qingmei was tearing up. Emo Qingqing stood behind her, helping her with the wedding dress. Qing'e smiled at Qin Wenyin. At this moment, she slowly turned and walked to Emo Qingqing's side, holding her hand. Elder sister Qing'e. Emo Qingqing started. Today was her elder sister Qing'e's wedding. Didn't they say that she was only here to help? Qingqing. Qing'e gently smiled. She pulled Emo Qingqing along as the two of them stood on the back of the phoenix. Although today was the day of her wedding, how could she enjoy such a scene alone? This should belong to them together. Right now, the two of them were like sisters, even closer than sisters. Tears flowed from the corners of Emo Qingqing's eyes. She glared in the direction of Qin Wenyin. Her beauty was so breathtaking that it was suffocating. Upon seeing these two supreme beauties, the people of the immortal realms couldn't help but sigh. Only the Heaven Empyrean was worthy of these two beauties. How could Qin Wenyin not feel boundless gentleness in his heart? The golden-winged great rock let out a long cry as it flew forward. The dragon and phoenix protected him while the Kirin opened the path. Qin Wenyin stood on auspicious clouds, walking towards the side of Qing'e and Qingqing. After that, he stood in the middle of the two of them as he smiled warmly at them. At this moment in this scene, there was no need to say anything. Qin Wenyin held their hands and faced the world. He swore in his heart that in this lifetime he would definitely protect the women he loved the most. At this instant, the gazes of countless people landed on the three of them. The Heaven Empyrean was announcing his love to the world. The people of the Lifefire Palace involuntarily thought back to the scene when Qin Wenyin ascended to the position of chairman. However, what he could give to Yi Qinyu clearly couldn't be compared to these two beauties. After all, this was the main wife. Congratulations to the Heaven Empyrean. At this moment, the experts of the Lifefire Palace who were guarding the two sides all brandished their divine weapons and pointed them at the sky. Beams of light shot up into the clouds, wanting to pierce through the sky. Congratulations to the Devil Sovereign. In the direction of the myriad Devil Islands, countless experts bowed. In fact, there were even many devil cultivators who knelt on one knee to show their respect. This was supreme respect. Right now, the Devil Sovereign wasn't merely the myriad Devil Sovereign, he was also the ruler of the world. Congratulations to the Heaven Empyrean. In the surroundings, the experts from the various peak powers all bowed as well. At this moment, no matter what thoughts they had towards Qin Wenyin in the past, there was only respect for him now. He unified the world, killed Empyreans, killed ancient emperors, and was unrivaled under the heavens. Qin Wentian's accomplishments caused the entire world to sigh in admiration. Regardless of friend or foe, they all had to show respect to him. At this instant, those experts who came here to watch the ceremony were also affected by the intense emotions. All of them bowed and shouted, "Congratulations to the world! Congratulations to the Heaven Empyrean! Congratulations to the Heaven Empyrean! Congratulations to the Heaven Empyrean!" Their voices continued to radiate out into the distance, spreading throughout the entire Heaven Empyrean city. With a glance, the countless people in Heaven Empyrean city all bowed and paid their respects. Chapter 1709. The echoes lingered in the sky, and the sound of shock lingered for a long time. This scene made everyone's blood boil. Everyone involuntarily fell into this atmosphere. At this moment, There was only supreme reverence and blessings in their hearts. There were no other distracting thoughts. In this world, there were only 3 beautiful silhouettes left: the Heaven Empyrean Qin Wenyan, Evergreen Qing and Mo Qingqing. The people from the Qin clan and Mo clan felt great waves of shock in their hearts. They only felt their blood boiling as the blood in their bodies churned unceasingly. Everyone in the world was paying their respects to the Heaven Empyrean. How could they not feel their souls trembling? They knew that they would never be able to forget this scene for the rest of their lives. Staring at the white-robed figure in the air, tears flowed down Qin Chuan's old face. He who had experienced the vicissitudes of life couldn't control his tears at all. The child he brought up wasn't merely a hegemon in this particle world. At this moment, how could he not understand that even in this immortal realms, Qin Wenyan was also an unrivaled character? No matter if they were immortals, kings, emperors, they all had to bow to him. At this moment, who couldn't tell that Qin Wenyan's current status wasn't because of his identity as a princess of the Evergreen Kingdom? Everything was because of Qin Wenyan, the Heaven Empyrean, Qin Wenyan. Qin Yao sobbed loudly, tears flowed down her face. In this situation, other than tears, there was nothing else. Luo Huan, Yiling Shuang and the others all cried. Even Yi Qingyun couldn't help but cry. Fairy Qingmei and the others, as well as those from the Mo clan, there were simply too many people who were crying. These were tears of excitement, tears of joy. Let alone them, even Fan Lu and the others who already knew of Qin Wenyan's identity couldn't help but feel their eyes turning red when they felt the atmosphere. Fan Lu rubbed his eyes and mumbled, "This is such a joyous occasion. Is there a need to lie to my emotions? But I clearly didn't see any touching scenes. Why do I, fatty, feel like crying? Xian Exin, what do you think is happening?" "How would I know?" Xian Exin sobbed. When Fan Le glanced at Xian Exin beside him, he only saw tears flowing down her cheeks unceasingly. She once heard that Qin Wenyan was once hunted by the immortal realms. Half of the peak powers in the immortal realms surrounded the Evergreen Kingdom, wanting to take his life. Qin Er's hair turned white overnight, and Mo Qingqing's heart was like dead ashes. Now, did they finally succeed? Even after countless years, this legend would probably still be passed down. No one would be willing to forget this romantic and heaven-defying legendary history. "Mou, why are you crying? Brother-in-law is so powerful, shouldn't you be happy?" At this moment, Mo Feng finally understood what sort of status Qin Wenyan had in the immortal realms. The Heaven Empyrean of the immortal realms, an unrivaled status. "Don't talk about me, aren't you the same?" Mou glared at Mo Feng. "Am I? I'm clearly smiling, okay?" Mo Feng laughed, wiping away the hot tears on his face. He was so happy that he was crying. No one would have thought that this scene would have such a powerful tear-jerking effect. Qin Wenyan, Qin Er and Mo Qingqing's friends and relatives had no way to control the emotions in their hearts. In the Myriad Devil Islands camp, the veil of the incomparably esteemed priestess was wet. She inclined her head and stared at the white-robed figure as her heartbreaking voice rang out, "Wenyan Gij." After calling out, she actually knelt on the ground and started crying. The people in the surroundings were all incomparably shocked. The blood priest, the blood empress, was actually crying like a little girl. If this was in normal times, it would simply be unimaginable. No one could understand the emotions in Bai Qing's heart. Although right now Qin Wenyan was the focus of attention in the world, other than the people of the Qin clan, who else knew Wenyan Gij earlier than her? They were childhood sweethearts and played together. Wenyan Gij even guided her in cultivation until one day, everything changed. Their lives had a heaven-shaking, earth-toppling change. Right now, when she saw her Wenyan Gij holding the hands of Qing Er and Qingqing, the people of the immortal realms came to congratulate him. Most probably no one would be more moved than her. She knew that she shouldn't cry on a joyous occasion, but at this moment, she only wanted to cry her heart out. She didn't want to think too much about anything else. Bai Wuya, Jun Mingchen and the others all stared unblinkingly at this scene. Bai Wuya felt pride in his heart. Jun Mingchen clenched his fists tightly, feeling incomparably glorious. He mumbled in a low voice, Senior brother. After a very, very long time, the thunderous voices finally calmed down. In this boundlessly vast heaven Empyrean city, it was so quiet that not a single sound could be heard. This was simply a miracle. Everyone in the city quietened down. Although there were many people who couldn't see the scene here and couldn't see from such a far distance, they all heard the congratulatory voices earlier. They were all affected and started to congratulate Qin Wenyin. When the voices stopped, everyone fell silent. They were only staring in the direction of the Evergreen Kingdom Palace. Qin Wenyin held the hands of Qing and Qingqing. He stared at the crowd and spoke, "Today is the day of my grand wedding. In Heaven Empyrean City, all the inns will be filled with good wine and delicacies. Everything will be borne by me. Today, I will place 100 high-grade Emperor-ranked weapons in interspatial rings. They will belong to whoever gets their hands on them. No one is allowed to snatch them away. Today, I will scatter Emperor-ranked stones everywhere in Heaven Empyrean City. Everyone in the city can use them to comprehend their insights, but no one is allowed to keep them for themselves. They will be shared with everyone in Heaven Empyrean City." Qin Wentian's voice directly rang through the entire Heaven Empyrean City, causing the hearts of countless people to tremble. This was the generosity of the Heaven Empyrean. 100 high-grade Emperor-ranked weapons, this was simply unimaginable. The Heaven Empyrean would even scatter Emperor-ranked stones everywhere in Heaven Empyrean City, allowing everyone to comprehend their insights and cultivate. When the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, boundless light suddenly radiated from him. Resplendent beams of spatial light shot towards all directions in Heaven Empyrean City, bringing with them interspatial rings and Emperor stones. At this moment, everyone in Heaven Empyrean City only saw countless beams of spatial light descending from the sky, directly landing on the ground. Many people frenziedly tried to snatch the interspatial rings. Those who obtained them all had expressions of wild joy on their faces, but no one dared to snatch them. Everyone could sense the Heaven Empyrean's immortal sense enveloping the entire city. Who would dare to disobey the Heaven Empyrean's orders? All of a sudden, countless beams of light shot out from Heaven Empyrean City. The Emperor stones of various attributes radiated resplendent light. In the air, astral light cascaded downwards, landing on the Emperor stones. Hence, the entire Heaven Empyrean City seemed to have transformed into a city of starry space, bathing in boundless astral light. Before Qin Wenyin, the experts from the various peak powers were still there. They didn't try to snatch the interspatial rings. Those subordinates of Qin Wenyin weren't in a hurry at all. Since the Heaven Empyrean could bestow rewards to the world, how could they be left out? As for those who didn't belong to Qin Wenyin, they only felt boundless regret in their hearts. A single wrong choice would cause them to lose everything. The atmosphere of the entire Heaven Empyrean City grew lively. Qin Wenyin smiled as he watched everything. He held onto the hands of Qing and Qingqing as he turned and walked towards Chongqing the Great and Qin Chuan. When he arrived before them, the three of them all bowed. He didn't bow to the heavens or the earth, he only bowed to his parents and elders. Chongqing the Great, Qin Chuan and the others hurriedly stood up, supporting the bodies of Qin Wenyin and the two others. Although they were relatives, what status did Qin Wenyin have now? He was someone everyone in the world worshipped and had the title of Heaven Empyrean. How heavy was the weight of his bow? However, Qin Wenyin didn't bother about him and continued to bow. This was something he ought to do. Wenyin, from now onwards, my daughter will be completely handed over to you. Take good care of Qing. Chongqing the Great patted Qin Wentian's shoulder as he spoke. Right now, Qin Wenyin had already surpassed him by too much and was more suitable to protect Qing compared to him. Today they were officially married. From now onwards, wherever Qin Wenyin went, Qing would follow. He wouldn't say anything more. They would live and die together. Father! Qin Wenyin called out, no longer referring to his father as Heaven Empyrean. Chongqing the Great started. After that, he started laughing uproariously. His eyes turned red as he nodded. Good, good. Qin Wenyin stared at the familiar figures before him. These were all his close friends and family. Right now, they were all gathered here to attend his wedding. He was truly very happy. Wen, congratulations. The Southern Phoenix matriarch walked over and congratulated him. Yao Yue, thank you for preparing everything. Qin Wendian smiled. Everything about the wedding was personally arranged by the Southern Phoenix matriarch. Even the demons who came to help were also arranged by her. Are you being polite with me? Nanfeng Yao Yue smiled charmingly. Right now, she no longer treated herself as an elder and was much more natural in front of Qin Wenyin. Ancient, let's use today to settle the situation in the immortal realms. Qin Wendian smiled. He turned and stared at the people of the immortal realms. A moment later, the gazes of countless people landed on him. Each and every action of Qin Wenyin was being watched by countless people. There's one more thing I want to announce to the world today. Now that Azure Mystic has been unified, there are many guests from the outside world. I know that some of them have arrived today, but I hope that the guests from the supreme ancient immortal realms would mind their own business and not cause trouble in Azure Mystic. If not, they would be my enemies. Since I'm the overlord of Azure Mystic, I naturally have to protect it. Qin Wenyin said, and everyone listened quietly. In addition, now that the situation in the immortal realms has stabilized, Heaven Empyrean City will become the capital of Azure Mystic. The myriad Devil Islands will be the same as before, governed by the Devil Mountain. As for the desolate 10,000 mountain range, I won't interfere. The demonic races can enter the immortal realms, but they have to abide by the rules and not wreak havoc or their entire race will be annihilated. As for the immortal realms, the eastern region will be governed by the Evergreen Kingdom. The southern region will be governed by GD and her sect. The western region will be governed by the Namhuang clan. The northern region will be governed by the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom, Jadestige Immortal Palace and 100 Refinements sect. The central region will be governed by the Shooting Sun Kingdom and Wenxin Temple. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, countless people were stunned. They all understood that Qin Wentian's words would determine the future situation of the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. These powers were designated as the legitimate hegemonic powers, helping the Heaven Empyrean to govern the world. One could very well imagine that these powers would soon welcome a glorious page in their history. Chapter 1710. The grand wedding of the Heaven Empyrean was a matter that attracted the attention of the entire world. Today, the entire world celebrated. The atmosphere in Heaven Empyrean City was incomparably frenzied. There were 100 people who obtained peak-stage Emperor-ranked weapons and were incomparably excited. For those who didn't obtain any weapons, they were all comprehending the astral light in Heaven Empyrean City. That was the radiance of the Emperor-ranked stones. It could allow them to comprehend and cultivate. Similarly, on this day, the structure of Azure Mystic was set. The orthodox powers were divided and these major powers were all located in Heaven Empyrean City. Hence, Heaven Empyrean City would become the center of Azure Mystic. The news of this soon circulated out to all corners of the immortal realms. Even after countless years, the grand wedding of the Heaven Empyrean was still discussed enthusiastically by everyone. And for those who had personally witnessed this legendary event, they would always be incomparably excited every time they mentioned it. Their eyes were filled with the flames of passion. Today, Qin Wenyin welcomed the most perfect day of his life. Many friends and family gathered around him. Under the night sky, he shared a pillow with his 2 wives, but he didn't have any distracting thoughts. He only hugged Qing and Qingqing, enjoying this rare moment. He discovered that after Qing and Qingqing fell asleep, there were traces of tears at the corners of their eyes. As for the Qin residents, Mo residents and the other close friends of Qin Wendian, they couldn't sleep today. This grand wedding couldn't be erased from their minds. Scenes of the people of the world bowing and congratulating Qin Wendian would appear in their minds. That scene was deeply imprinted in the depths of their souls. Only after several days did the commotion gradually die down. However, Heaven Empyrean City was still incomparably lively and bustling. Not only did the number of people not decrease, it actually increased instead. Because many experts who didn't make it in time had all arrived, and there were also those who heard that there were Emperor-ranked stones in Heaven Empyrean City. This caused Qin Wentian's subordinates to have no choice but to give the order to control the flow of people entering Heaven Empyrean City. If this continued, the countless wide streets in Heaven Empyrean City would become unusable. During these few days, Qin Wentian didn't do anything. He didn't cultivate and only accompanied his family and friends, chatting with them. His elder sister Qin Yao and Yi Lingshuang were always by his side, while his senior sister Luo Huan would tease him from time to time. This caused Qin Wentian to feel a rare sense of joy, as though he had returned to the past. Fatty Fan Lu was as shameless as ever, looking for beauties everywhere he went. Every time he was caught by Xian Xian, he would beg for mercy and Xian Xian would forgive him. Mo Feng and Mo Yu, the two little fellows, kept pestering Qin Wentian, asking Qin Wentian to guide them in their cultivation. However, given their current cultivation bases, why would they need Qin Wentian to personally guide them? Lin Xian was also invited into the Heaven Empyrean Palace specially constructed for Qin Wentian. However, she only spoke a few words with Qin Wentian before she left. She didn't cry, she only had a smile on her face that was filled with blessings. Qin Chuan, Mo Qingqing's father and the other elders naturally had smiles on their faces, they were so happy that they couldn't conceal their grins. However, Qin Wentian also encountered a troublesome matter. Qin Chuan and the other elders actually wanted to hug their grandchildren. Qin Wentian felt his head swelling. The path of cultivation was extremely long and the path of cultivation was extremely difficult. How would he dare to give birth so easily? He had always been using some underhanded methods, not letting others know about it. This caused his senior apprentice sister Luo Huan to tease him about this matter, causing Qin Wentian to feel his head swelling. Everything was so beautiful. Sometimes, Qin Wentian even thought that if he could continue living his life like this, with his family by his side and beauties by his side, wouldn't that be a kind of perfection? However, the path of cultivation was extremely long. If one didn't step into the peak of the martial path, it would be hard for one to achieve true perfection. In the world of cultivation, one's life was already out of one's control. If it wasn't for the fact that he had the strength he had today and was able to unify the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms, would there be such a happy reunion today? Back then, he had already died once. He naturally understood this logic. If he didn't continue forward, there would be danger waiting for him ahead. In addition, there was still one thing he had yet to accomplish. This was something he had always hidden in the depths of his heart. He still had to bear the burden of a blood feud. Today, in the Heaven Empyrean Palace, Qin Wentian gathered the Chongqing the Great, GD, the Southern Phoenix Matriarch, the Dark North Immortal Emperor and the others. These people controlled the entire immortal realms, they were the true masters of the immortal realms. For the next period of time, all of you can choose the core members of your respective clans or sects to come to the Heaven Empyrean Palace. My current cultivation base is slightly higher than all of you and I can give you some guidance. Also, in addition to the treasures I have on me, I can help all of you in your cultivation. Naturally, the people I choose must be absolutely trustworthy. For Azure Mystic to have its current situation, all of you have contributed to it. I don't hope that in the future, your descendants would want to overthrow the current peaceful situation. Qin Wentian spoke. Everyone present nodded. Some of them had some grudges in their hearts when they submitted to Qin Wentian back then. After all, the name wasn't good. They were originally hegemons of a region, yet they had to listen to the orders of others. But now, they discovered that there was nothing wrong with that. Their authority was much greater than before, they had become the true hegemon of the immortal realms. Now that Azure Mystic was unified, Qin Wentian wouldn't ask them to do anything. Even when they dealt with the immortal Qianbian Gate and the Jiang clan, Qin Wentian acted alone. They didn't even have to do anything and could be said to be enjoying the fruits of Qin Wentian's labor. Right now, Qin Wentian wanted to help them in their cultivation. The Shooting Sun Kingdom, Hokage Sengoku Kingdom, and the other peak powers were all silently sighing at the choice they made back then. There's one more thing. Right now, more and more experts from the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms are coming to Azure Mystic. I'm a little worried. After this matter is concluded, I will leave Azure Mystic. At that time, the Immortal Realms will have to depend on everyone. Naturally, if there's anyone who is willing to roam the supreme ancient immortal realms, you can come with me. This is up to you all to make your own decision. Qin Wendian continued. He treated everyone like this. He wouldn't make a choice for them. Everything would be up to them to choose the path they want to walk. Naturally, this matter isn't urgent. Everyone can think about it carefully. If anyone wishes to leave, you have to make sure to make the necessary arrangements before you leave. Qin Wendian spoke. Many people here felt their hearts stirring. They have already reached the end of their cultivation here and they have witnessed extraordinary strength. Could it be that they didn't feel envy and yearn for it? Qin Wendian returned from the supreme ancient immortal realms and became so powerful. Could it be that they didn't have any thoughts about it? The powerful supreme ancient immortal realms was the highest realm among the 33 immortal realms. Experts were as common as clouds and immortal emperors could be found everywhere. Ancient emperors might only appear once every 10,000 years, but there were countless of them in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Just in Azure Mystic alone, many of them have died recently. Everyone, is there anything else? Qin Wendian asked. Benefactor Qin, this poor monk wishes to speak with Benefactor alone. The Reverend from Wenxin Temple spoke. Qin Wendian was somewhat taken aback. Sure, I will listen to Reverend's guidance. The others stood up and bade farewell, leaving behind only Qin Wendian and the Reverend from Wenxin Temple, as well as Chongqing the Great. Chongqing, do you want to speak or should I? The Reverend from Wenxin Temple asked. This matter isn't very glorious, let me speak instead. Chongqing the Great smiled. Qin Wendian, there's no need for me to speak too much about the great nirvana immortal art, right? Qin Wendian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. He stared in bewilderment at Chongqing the Great and the Reverend from Wenxin Temple. He didn't expect that the Reverend from Wenxin Temple would actually stay behind for this matter. This great nirvana immortal art originated from Wenxin Temple. However, the method I obtained wasn't very glorious. Luckily, Reverend didn't pursue the matter. Chongqing the Great spoke. The great nirvana immortal art actually originated from Wenxin Temple? Qin Wendian felt shock in his heart. Great nirvana, nirvanic rebirth, creating an avatar. The Evergreen Kingdom truly didn't have such a technique. In truth, my Wenxin Temple also has an extremely ancient inheritance. According to the records in our temple, we are a Buddhist sect that originated from the ancient Azure Mystic immortal realms. This great nirvana immortal art can be traced back to ancient Azure Mystic. When cultivators of the Buddhist sect comprehend the Tao, their avatars would allow them to experience the different sceneries of the world. If not, if they really went into closed-door seclusion, it would be hard for them to achieve enlightenment. I'm ashamed to say this. The Reverend from Wenxin Temple pressed his palms together as he spoke. Qin Wendian pondered for a moment before he understood the meaning of the Reverend's words. The Reverend from Wenxin Temple mostly cultivated in asceticism and didn't enter the secular world to cultivate. However, they had avatars that allowed them to experience everything in the world, love and hate, even giving birth to children. Most probably, there were many things that went against the principles of the Buddhist sect. This was the reason why the Reverend from Wenxin Temple said that he was ashamed. Qin Wendian stared at the Reverend in front of him. Seems like the Reverend had avatars. This was truly interesting. Naturally, the scripture vault of Wenxin Temple is a place where cultivation arts are not divulged to outsiders. The great nirvana immortal art is also not widely known by many. In Wenxin Temple, there are only a few who have the qualifications to cultivate it. However, there are also scum in the temple. There was once a disciple of my senior brother who had extremely high talent in the Buddhist path, but his character wasn't good. We persuaded him to leave the temple, but he actually snuck into the scripture vault to steal the cultivation art. Also, he originated from a major power and caused quite a commotion back then. Many people were killed in the commotion, and after Chongqing received the news, he actually interfered and participated in the theft of the treasures. In the end, he was discovered by our temple. The Reverend from Wenxin Temple slowly spoke. Chongqing the Great had a bitter smile on his face. For this matter, he wasn't kind at all. In that case, Why did the great Nirvana immortal art end up in my hands? Qin Wentian asked. That wasn't the original copy. As for why it ended up in your hands, the Reverend from Wenshin Temple smiled and said, remember what I said last time? Benefactor Qin and our temple are fated. This fate was forged many years ago. Reverend, what do you mean by that? Qin Wenin was even more confused as he opened his mouth to ask. This was the treasure of the temple and it was impossible for it to be divulged to outsiders. Wenshin Temple wouldn't even allow Chongqing the Great to cultivate it. How did it end up in his hands? Benefactor Yuanfeng, you and our temple are fated. You and Benefactor Yuanfeng are very similar. The Reverend stood up and clasped his hands together. He bowed to Qin Wentian and then turned to leave. Qin Wentian was shocked. Looking at the departing silhouette of the Reverend from Wenshin Temple, he asked, Reverend, can you stay for a moment? If Benefactor Qin is free, you can come to Wenshin Temple for a visit. There are some records of the secrets of Qing Xian in the ancient books of Wenshin Temple. I won't talk about it in detail here. Farewell. The Reverend from Wenshin Temple said and left immediately. Qin Wentian didn't expect there to be such a story behind it. Chapter 1711. After the Reverend from Wenshin Temple left, Qin Wentian had no way to calm his heart. Who was Reverend Yuanfeng? Clearly, he was none other than Qin Yuanfeng. The Reverend from Wenshin Temple said that his father, Qin Yuanfeng, had a connection with Wenshin Temple. In that case, there was no doubt that his father had once appeared in Azure Mystic before. Also, Wenshin Temple was willing to give up on the matter of the Evergreen Kingdom stealing the great Nirvana immortal art and allowed Chongqing the Great to deliver it to him. The reason for all of this was actually because of his father. In the past, although Qin Wentian did suspect that the great Nirvana immortal art was extraordinary, he didn't connect it with his father. Wenshin Temple had a legacy that originated from ancient Azure Mystic. They should know the secrets of ancient Azure Mystic. Seems like if there was a chance, he would have to make a trip there. Qin Wentian turned his gaze to Chongqing the Great as a puzzled expression appeared on his face. Upon seeing Qin Wentian's gaze, Chongqing the Great smiled. Qin Yuanfeng appeared in the immortal realms before, but his appearance was very brief, like a blooming cactus. However, his brilliance was still as dazzling as ever, but he was soon forgotten. I didn't expect him to have such a good relationship with Wenshin Temple. He should be your father, right? So father has long guessed it. Qin Wentian nodded. He didn't hide this from Chongqing the Great. Chongqing the Great's words didn't cause him to feel surprised. Qin Yuanfeng came here to hide from the world. He chose Azure Mystic because this place wouldn't attract the attention of the people from the supreme ancient immortal realms. But even so, his father wouldn't create too much of a commotion in the immortal realms. After all, although the supreme ancient immortal realms couldn't enter Azure Mystic, they still had spies there. Chongqing the Great didn't say anything. He wasn't that familiar with Qin Yuanfeng and wasn't clear about the details of this matter. The true mastermind behind all of this was the White Emperor. Back then, the person who came into contact with Wenshin Temple was also the White Emperor. He was always right, he had never been wrong. Just like how he predicted that Qin Wentian would change the fate of the Evergreen Kingdom. Ever since Qin Wentian appeared, the Evergreen Kingdom had been in turmoil. Palace Lord, this subordinate has something to report. Outside the Heaven Empyrean Palace, someone spoke. He didn't dare to use his immortal sense to probe inside. No one would dare to do so. However, as long as he spoke, Qin Wentian would naturally be able to hear it. Come in. Qin Wentian spoke. Su Li walked in with a jade slip in his hand. Palace Lord, someone said that he wants to pass this to you. Qin Wentian waved his hand as the jade slip flew into it. His immortal sense entered it as sharpness gleamed in his eyes. He then turned his gaze towards a certain direction. His gaze was extremely cold. What happened? Chongqing the Great asked. Father, this is news from Hua Taishu. He wants to leave Azure Mystic and told me to seal the city of ancient emperors. Qin Wentian spoke. Seal the city of ancient emperors? Chongqing the Great's eyes gleamed with sharpness. The city of ancient emperors had always been a place where ancient emperors were born. Many experts would head there to temper themselves. After Qin Wendian returned, the immortal realms were continuously shaken and many geniuses from the city of ancient emperors came out. But even now, there were still many people cultivating in the city of ancient emperors. Also, this would continue to be the case in the future. Ensham, father, do you remember that there are Tao elements in the city of ancient emperors? However, the inheritors of the Tao elements have to fight against each other until the strongest expert emerges. Hua Taishu told me that the city of ancient emperors is a supreme treasure that connects the supreme ancient immortal realms to Azure Mystic. Even if the city of ancient emperors is sealed, some of the Tao elements would still be able to use the city of ancient emperors to spread their wills. This is extremely dangerous. Qin Wendian spoke. He understood that Hua Taishu's words were right. The city of ancient emperors had to be sealed or there would be future troubles. Qin had also received the inheritance of the Tao elements. Qin Wendian guessed that those powers from the upper world that had Tao elements might even be stronger than the lifelong realm. Since you already have a plan in your heart, just do it. Chongqing the Great naturally believed in Qin Wendian. Since he said that he wanted to seal the city of ancient emperors, in that case, from now onwards, this city of ancient emperors which had always had an extremely important position in the immortal realms would most probably cease to exist. For the next period of time, I will guide the experts from the various powers in their cultivation, imparting some of my experiences. After that, I will make a trip to Wenqin Temple. Qin Wendian spoke. Chongqing the Great nodded lightly. On the second day, the various powers brought their people over. The majority of them were immortal emperors, and there were also transcendent-level immortal kings. Also, all of them were core characters of their respective powers. Qin Wendian started to preach about the Tao, imparting his cultivation experiences and bringing them to other places. He took out the treasured gems and allowed them to sense the energy within, helping them to gain insights. As the saying goes, it's hard to pass down the Tao, everything depended on one's own comprehension. However, there was still some use to it as long as the person imparting the Tao was strong enough. Back then, when he preached about the Tao in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, many people were able to gain insights and undergo a transformation. At the same time when Qin Wendian was preaching about the Tao in Heaven Empyrean City, Di Tian arrived at the chaotic surroundings of the city of ancient emperors. Back then, he had to rely on the Black Dragon to enter the city of ancient emperors. But now, he had already surpassed the immortal emperor realm and was much stronger. He directly flew forward, sending his immortal sense into the surroundings. Within the boundless tempest, there seemed to be another world. In that world, a supreme treasure could be seen, radiating a resplendent light. This was an illusory world, a universe within a palm. Sir, who might you be? A rumbling sound rang out as a terrifying black dragon appeared before Di Tian. This was none other than the black dragon that guarded the city of ancient emperors. The Heaven Empyrean has given the order to seal the city of ancient emperors. Di Tian spoke. The black dragon roared, causing the entire sea region to tremble violently. Impudent! Does he know what the city of ancient emperors is? A treasure from the upper world? Right now, the Heaven Empyrean is in control of Azure Mystic. He doesn't allow the city of ancient emperors to exist. Di Tian's voice was cold. The black dragon's expression was extremely ugly to behold. Lightning crackled around him as the entire sea region went berserk. Lightning from the 9 heavens descended from the heavens, blasting towards Di Tian. You aren't a corporeal body, you are just a manifestation of your spirit body. Di Tian calmly spoke. Boundless sealing power descended from the sky, gushing towards the black dragon. At the same time, a sealing light screen appeared, blocking the 9 heavens from the 9 heavens. Di Tian waved his hands as countless sealing chains directly wrapped around the black dragon, locking him within. The black dragon roared in rage. Do you know what you are doing? Shut up. A chain directly slammed into the black dragon's face, causing a bloody scar to appear. This humiliation caused the black dragon to go crazy. This ant from Azure Mystic actually dared to offend him like this? Swishing sounds rang out unceasingly as the chains slammed into the black dragon's body. This caused the black dragon to roar in rage. "You will regret this. The Heaven Empyrean wants me to tell you this. You are very fortunate that you didn't have the foresight back then and didn't allow him to control the inheritance of the city of ancient emperors, allowing him to have today. In order to repay you, you shall be sealed here together with the city of ancient emperors." Di Tian continued speaking. The terrifying chains pierced through the black dragon's body, directly destroying him. This black dragon wasn't his true body. His true body should still be in the city of ancient emperors. Stepping out, Qin Wenyan continued deeper into the tempest, breaking through the layers of obstructions and arriving outside the city. He then spoke. "People in the city of ancient emperors, listen up. Everyone, immediately retreat from the city of ancient emperors. The Heaven Empyrean has given the order to seal the city of ancient emperors. If you still don't retreat after a day, you shall be sealed together with the city of ancient emperors." At this instant, the hearts of the experts in the city of ancient emperors pounded violently. They naturally weren't unfamiliar with the name of the Heaven Empyrean. Who didn't know that the Heaven Empyrean had unified the immortal realms? Even for those who had never left the city of ancient emperors before, they all knew about it. Because the name of the Heaven Empyrean had long spread to every corner of the immortal realms. It was the same in the city of ancient emperors as well. As long as one was powerful enough, they would definitely know about it. The Heaven Empyrean had given the order to seal the city of ancient emperors. How tyrannical were these words? Although they didn't understand, they still madly sped towards the exit point, preparing to use the teleportation arrays to leave this place. Hence, the teleportation arrays in the city of ancient emperors were activated unceasingly. The experts in the city of ancient emperors were all fleeing madly as waves of shock rocked their hearts. A day later, in this vast sea region, a supremely powerful sealing technique manifested, blotting out the sun, wanting to seal this entire space. The experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms could enter the city of ancient emperors. Naturally, it wasn't for no reason. This was because the city of ancient emperors was connected to the upper world. But as long as it was sealed, the connection between the city of ancient emperors and the upper world would naturally be severed. There was naturally no need to doubt Di Tian's sealing abilities. When the entire space turned into a screen of sealing light, the entire sea region was like a gigantic sealing diagram. Boundless runic light shone from the sky, locking down the city of ancient emperors, completely enveloping it. After that, Di Tian left the city of ancient emperors. In the sealed space, a roar of rage rang out, filled with humiliation and reluctance. Once, he had found the next protector of the city of ancient emperors and was prepared to pass the inheritance to him. However, because of the arrival of the Tao element, the era had changed and he had to make a new choice. But never in his wildest dreams did he expect that when that person came here again, it was no longer about the inheritance. Instead, he directly ordered his subordinates to seal the city of ancient emperors. In fact, even Qin Wenyan himself didn't come. What attitude was this? Right now, he was the master of the entire Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. The city of ancient emperors was sealed by the Heaven Empyrean, causing another huge commotion. Many people in the immortal realms were discussing this matter. In fact, there were even some who guessed that the Heaven Empyrean was worried that someone would break through to the ancient emperor realm and surpass him, threatening his position. However, such voices were soon drowned out by saliva. Would the Heaven Empyrean fear an ancient emperor? Don't forget how the Heavenly Talisman realm and the Jiang clan broke apart. How did those ancient emperors die? Since the Heaven Empyrean wanted to seal the city of ancient emperors, he naturally had his own reasons. Right now, there were simply too many loyal followers of Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan was the god of Azure Mystic, a supreme existence. No one would doubt him. And as expected, after that, news circulated out. Right now, the Heaven Empyrean was currently in the Heaven Empyrean Palace, guiding the immortal emperors of the various peak powers in their cultivation, imparting them the method to break through to the immortal emperor realm. This caused countless people to feel envy. The Heaven Empyrean personally nurtured the various peak powers, hoping that Azure Mystic would grow stronger. Would he seal the city of ancient emperors because of his jealousy? This was clearly something impossible. Just when everyone was speculating in the northern regions of the Immortal Realms, in the forbidden grounds of the original Hokage Sengoku Kingdom, many Empyreans from the supreme ancient Immortal Realms arrived. At this moment, Qin Wenyin actually arrived at the Wenshin Temple, the only power that refused to move to the Heaven Empyrean city. Chapter 1712. After the passage of countless years, the Wenshin Temple now exuded a tranquil and peaceful aura. Within a treasured temple, the Reverend Tianxin of the Ascart Temple sat on a praying mat while Qin Wenyin sat opposite him. Beside him, a novice monk around the age of 10 was busying himself, moving some jade slips and ancient scrolls into the space between the Reverend Tianxin and Qin Wenyin. These were all ancient scrolls of the Ascart Temple that had been passed down for a long time. "Master, I've brought them all." The young novice monk pressed his palms together as he spoke to the Reverend. "Okay, Wuxin, you can leave now." Reverend Tianxin nodded to the young novice monk. The young novice monk then bowed to Qin Wenyin. "Benefactor Qin, Wuxin bids his farewell." "Many thanks." Qin Wenyin smiled as he nodded his head. The little novice monk then departed. "Reverend, this disciple of yours is truly impressive." Qin Wenyin laughed. "Indeed, he has great wisdom." Reverend Tianxin nodded. His gaze landed on the ancient scrolls before him as he continued, "These are the only things left in our temple. Benefactor Qin, please take a look." "Many thanks, Reverend." Qin Wenyin nodded. After that, he took the jade slips and ancient scrolls over. His immortal sense seeped into the jade slips and instantly he obtained many pieces of information. After that, a sharp light flashed in the center of his brows. After that, he flipped through the ancient scrolls and instantly, many ancient characters were imprinted into his mind, transforming into motes of light. Qin Wenyin flipped through the pages unceasingly as more and more ancient characters floated into his mind. Qin Wenyin slowly flipped through the ancient scrolls. The interior of the temple was extremely quiet, there was no sound at all. Reverend Tianxin also didn't disturb him and closed his eyes to rest, like an old monk in meditation. After a long time, Qin Wenyin finally finished reading. His eyes flashed with a resplendent light as his heart was unable to calm down for a long time. Qin Wenyin drew in a deep breath, doing his best to suppress the shock in his heart, calming himself down. He didn't expect that the records in the ancient records of the Ascart Temple would actually be so shocking. There was a high possibility that these ancient records were the only copies in Azure Mystic. He didn't expect that the 33 immortal realms all had their own boundless histories. The supreme ancient immortal realms evolved through countless years and became the strongest immortal realms. However, the lower worlds all had their own glory. The Azure Mystic immortal realms once also had a glorious history. The Azure Mystic today is actually not the ancient Azure Mystic. Qin Wenyin mumbled, feeling somewhat shocked. "Grandmaster, do you know where ancient Azure Mystic is located?" Qin Wenyin asked Reverend Tianxin. Ancient Azure Mystic didn't refer to the changes of the era. It was just that the current Azure Mystic was incomparably vast. It might just be a small corner of ancient Azure Mystic. I have no idea. However, the people of the supreme ancient immortal realms most probably came here because of this. I wonder if these characters who are at the Empyrean realm would be able to find the entrance to ancient Azure Mystic. Reverend Tianxin shook his head. Although Azure Mystic is vast, the Immortals, the myriad Devil Islands, the desolate 10,000 mountain range are all extremely vast. But even so, it is still much smaller when compared to the supreme ancient immortal realms. The size of a single world is already comparable to the current Azure Mystic or even surpasses it. In the past, I've never thought about this because I wouldn't think about it in this direction. Only now did I realize that the Azure Mystic immortal realms we know of is actually not ancient Azure Mystic. The world-ending war recorded in the ancient books, how terrifying was it exactly? Qin Wenyin sighed in his heart. The jade slips and ancient books in the Wenqin Temple actually contained heaven-shaking secrets. There were some records regarding the Azure mystic immortal realms. It said that their Wenqin Temple's inheritance originated from ancient Azure mystic. However, because of that world-ending war, the entire world was annihilated, the lives of the people were plunged into misery and suffering. The entire Azure mystic was razed to flat ground. If things were really like what was recorded in the ancient books, then the word world-ending wasn't an exaggeration at all. This was simply too terrifying. A world in the 33 immortal realms was destroyed. What level of war was this exactly? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a world-ending war. After that, some survivors managed to escape from the world-ending war. However, the people of Azure Mystic were already destroyed, their homeland was already buried. They actually couldn't find the Azure Mystic of the past anymore. In the ancient books, an ancestor of the Wenqin Temple used a single sentence to describe this change. When you wake up from a dream, the heavens have already changed. Most probably, the current Azure Mystic was developed by the survivors of that world-ending war. Most probably, countless years had passed and it was basically impossible to verify. The history of the Wenqin Temple was so long that it caused the hearts of many to tremble. It could be said that it had grown up together with Azure Mystic until now. Maybe, this was also the reason why the Wenqin Temple insisted on only having a small number of their disciples enter the world. Their attitude was unyielding yet peaceful. They didn't want to compete, but they would never be bullied by others. They didn't compete because they knew of the existence of ancient Azure Mystic and the history of the world-ending war. In that case, what was there to compete for in Azure Mystic? Naturally, this was the transcendent nature of the Wenqin Temple's abbot. The people in the temple might not know of this period of history, and there might be people with different personalities appearing. But as long as the abbot didn't change, the will of the inheritance wouldn't change. They didn't want to be bullied by others because of their history. As the most ancient power in Azure Mystic, the Wenqin Temple naturally had its own pride. Also, sometimes, the pride of the Wenqin Temple would cause people to feel fear in their hearts. They wouldn't bully others, but they would never be bullied by others either. Many powers in the immortal realms felt reverence in their hearts towards the Wenqin Temple. This was also because they didn't know how long the history of the Wenqin Temple was. If not, the reverence in their hearts would be even stronger. Reverend, who do you think the person who sealed Azure Mystic is? Qin Wendian asked again. How would I know? However, I'm afraid it has something to do with that existence who described the world-ending war in the ancient books. Reverend Tianxin was as calm as ever. But back then when he read about this period of history, great waves of shock rose up in his heart. I feel the same way as well. Qin Wendian nodded. In the ancient records, ancient Azure Mystic was once a unified power. The entire boundless Azure Mystic immortal realms had a Heaven Lord. This Heaven Lord was known as the Imperishable Heaven Lord in ancient times. The Imperishable Heaven Lord was the master of ancient Azure Mystic. This naturally wasn't something the Heaven Empyrean today could compare to. That was ancient Azure Mystic, one of the true 33 heavens. It was an incomparably tyrannical power. How powerful was a Heaven Lord? If he wasn't powerful, how could so many powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms allow the imperishable Heaven Lord to rule the world? Now that Azure Mystic was sealed, Qin Wendian guessed that this had something to do with the imperishable Heaven Lord. In addition, that world-ending war in the supreme ancient immortal realms was said to have happened because of the imperishable Heaven Lord. When the heavenly deities descended, countless people directly prostrated themselves on the ground. Their might was unstoppable, capable of shaking the heavens. With a wave of their hands, the sun and moon lost their luster, mountains and rivers crumbled, the earth split apart, the seawater flowed in reverse, and lava from hell erupted from the earth's core. Everywhere they passed by, everything was destroyed. There were also heavenly deities summoning world-ending divine lightning, turning everything into ashes. Immortals and devils wept, emperors and emperors turned into skeletons. At this moment, the imperishable Heaven Lord appeared in the air, fighting against the heavenly deities in rage. The imperishable Heaven Lord wanted to shift the battlefield to the starry skies, but the other heavenly deities were unwilling. They directly fought the imperishable Heaven Lord in the airspace above Azure Mystic. That battle was extremely tragic, and there were heavenly deities who died. The imperishable Heaven Lord was also heavily injured, but he still managed to force the other heavenly deities to retreat. However, the people of Azure Mystic were plunged into misery and suffering. What was even more terrifying was that not long after, even more heavenly deities descended from the sky, bringing with them many heavenly soldiers and generals. The imperishable Heaven Lord commanded the world, and the generals of Azure Mystic followed him, fighting alongside him. This battle was known as the Dusk of the Deities. The blood of the heavenly soldiers and generals dyed the heavens and earth red. The generals of Azure Mystic fell one after another. They used their bodies to protect Azure Mystic, and when they saw the deaths of their generals, the lives of Azure Mystic were destroyed. The imperishable Heaven Lord transformed into a mountain and river, activating a forbidden art, sacrificing himself to bury the heavenly deities and Azure Mystic. This was an ancient record of that battle. It was very short, but these words were sufficient to shake the hearts of those who saw it. The ancestor of Wenshin Temple was actually one of the lucky survivors. He must have personally witnessed that battle, and hence, he recorded it down and sealed it in the ancient book. Who would have thought that after countless years, these ancient books were still preserved? Also, it was very possible that these were the only ancient books in Azure Mystic that had records of the world-ending battle. What sort of existences were heavenly deities? It was unknown if the expert who left behind this ancient book knew about it or not. A foreign heavenly deity brought many immortal soldiers and generals to participate in this battle. There was a high possibility that this heavenly deity came from a major power in the supreme ancient immortal realms and was a supremely terrifying power. The imperishable Heaven Lord fought the heavenly deity head-on and even forced him to retreat, killing him. It was simply unimaginable how powerful the imperishable Heaven Lord was. He was just a mere heaven empyrean. In front of the imperishable Heaven Lord, he was nothing more than an ant. But in truth, Qin Wendian also had some suspicions. Since the imperishable Heaven Lord might have already been destroyed, who could have such terrifying power to seal Azure Mystic? What sort of existence was that? Could it be that the imperishable Heaven Lord didn't die and was still alive? In that case, if this was the case, it would truly be too terrifying, able to live from the ancient times until now. Naturally, this was only a guess. No one knew if it was true or false. But there was no need to doubt that the person who sealed Azure Mystic must be extremely powerful. If not, he wouldn't have such capabilities. Benefactor Qin, do you have any thoughts after reading it? Reverend Tianxin asked Qin Wendian. Reverend, do you also wish to find ancient Azure Mystic? Qin Wendian asked. This should be the obsession of my ancestor. It's just that now, another supremely powerful expert from the supreme ancient immortal realms has descended. How similar is this scene? Luckily, the experts who descended this time around shouldn't be as powerful as the ones recorded in the ancient records. If not, it would surely be another calamity. Reverend Tianxin pressed his palms together as he spoke. That's true. Qin Wendian nodded. Hence, Benefactor Qin is now the Heaven Empyrean of Azure Mystic and is akin to the Heaven Lord of ancient Azure Mystic. In the future, the people of Azure Mystic will have to rely on Benefactor Qin. Reverend Tianxin bowed to Qin Wendian. Reverend, there's no need to do this. Qin Wendian stretched his hand out. Leaving aside the fact that there might not be a world-ending war like in the past, even if there is, it wouldn't be an apocalypse. Since I'm the Heaven Empyrean, I naturally have to protect Azure Mystic. Hence, after this matter is concluded, I will leave the Azure Mystic immortal realms. In that case, many thanks. Reverend Tianxin spoke again. Qin Wendian sighed. Reverend Tianxin's heart truly cared about the world. Chapter 1713. After the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms was unified, the world was calm. However, there seemed to be undercurrents surging in the dark. After Qin Wendian left the Wenshin Temple, there was still a trace of worry in his heart. He didn't know who was the one who sealed the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. But now that the seal was relaxed, this meant that the other party might very well allow ancient Azure Mystic to reappear in the world. If this was the case, news of this would surely spread to the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms. In that case, the various hegemonic powers of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms would surely send their armies over. How vast was the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms? How many peak powers were there? Ancient Azure Mystic has always been a legend, it hasn't appeared in the real world yet. This caused the Heavenly Talisman Realm and the other hegemonic powers to covet it and have been waiting in Azure Mystic. If ancient Azure Mystic was truly unearthed, given how powerful the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms were, even if those Empyreans didn't use teleportation arrays, they would still be able to teleport here. If Empyreans needed time to teleport, what if the other party sent world overlords or characters with a higher cultivation base to escort them here? Also, one could be sure that this was inevitable. A buried world where a world-ending battle once erupted, where many heavenly deity-level characters died, how strong would the allure of this place be? Even if it was a treasure left behind by a fallen heavenly deity in the lower realms, it would still be sufficient to attract countless experts to risk their lives. In any case, Qin Wenyan understood that once ancient Azure Mystic was exposed, this world wouldn't be as peaceful as it was now. During these days, Qin Wenyan enjoyed a rare moment of peace. His family and friends were still around, and other than explaining the Tao of cultivation to the experts of the various hegemonic powers, he would accompany his family and friends. Naturally, the majority of his time was spent accompanying Qing'er and Qingqing. During these days, Fan Lu was extremely jealous of Qin Wenyan. This was because Qin Wenyan was surrounded by beauties. Qing'er and Qingqing were already married to him and they were both his wives. But even so, Nam Huang Yunxi, Nanfeng Xinga, Yiling Shuang, Luo Huan, Qin Yao, Bai Qing and Purgatory, which one of them weren't extremely beautiful? Each of them had their own merits. Nam Huang Yunxi was noble, Nanfeng Xinga was beautiful, Luo Huan was sexy, Qin Yao was gentle, Lu Bingyu was cold and aloof, Bai Qing had the transcendent aura of a priestess of blood, Purgatory had a seductive charm and pure sexiness, as well as the beautiful fairies from the Jadestige Immortal Palace taking the initiative to visit them. This caused Fan Lu to sigh in admiration. At this moment, in the courtyard of the Heaven Empyrean Palace, beauties were as common as the clouds. Laughter filled the air, causing Fan Lu to be extremely jealous of Fan Lu. Wenyan, now that you have a beauty in your arms, your senior sister is still single. Senior sister treated you so well in the past, but now that you are the Heaven Empyrean, what do you plan to do? With so many beauties surrounding him, Qin Wenyan found it hard to endure. This was especially so for his senior sister Luo Huan. She had always been shooting her mouth off and would occasionally tease him. Senior sister, what can I do? Don't tell me you want me to introduce you guys to you? Qin Wenyan bitterly smiled. Luo Huan giggled and winked at Qin Wenyan. You can consider taking all of me as your senior sister. The beauties all started when they heard Luo Huan's words. Their laughter abruptly stopped as many people turned to Qin Wenyan. This atmosphere was a little strange. It seemed like Luo Huan's words also represented the thoughts of others. Qin Wenyan had a face filled with black lines. He sneakily glanced at Qing'er and Mo Qingqing at the side only to see Mo Qingqing smiling sweetly. Senior sister, if you had said this earlier, you would have gotten him to marry both of us a few days ago. Now that you have entered the Heaven Empyrean Palace, you would be even later than me and elder sister Qing'er. Wouldn't it be too unfair for senior sister? AI, seems like I can only die alone. Luo Huan bitterly sighed. Qin Yao smiled. Don't bully my Wenyan anymore. You are so alluring, how can you die alone? Qin Yao, you better understand the relationship between us. Right now, Wenyan already belongs to Qing'er and Qingqing. You have to step aside. Luo Huan smiled. Her relationship with Qin Yao had always been extremely good. So what of it? I'm still his elder sister, Qing'er and Qingqing. Don't you guys agree? Qin Yao gently spoke. Naturally. Mo Qingqing smiled warmly. Qing'er also smiled as she watched everyone chatting. The atmosphere was truly lively. So many people are helping him. This miss is so pitiful. Luo Huan felt wronged. That can't be. Right now, Sir Qin is already the Heaven Empyrean of the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. There are many immortal kings and emperors in the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms who have many concubines and concubines. The status of the Heaven Empyrean naturally wouldn't be inferior. Sir Qin is already married. He won't snatch the position of the wife, but he still has concubines. Why don't Sir Qin pick a few? What do you think about the holy maiden of my clan? The beautiful Nanfeng Xinga actually joked, her words causing Namhuang Yunxi's expression to stiffen. She glared at Nanfeng Xinga. What nonsense are you talking about? Did I say something wrong? Nanfeng Xinga smiled. Naturally. Namhuang Yunxi replied. I understand. Our holy maiden doesn't want to be a concubine? Nanfeng Xinga continued joking. Qin Wendian smiled at the two of them. Namhuang Yunxi glanced at Qin Wendian as her beautiful eyes flickered. You guys are intentionally trying to frame Wendian. Qin Yao giggled as she stared at Qing'er and Qingqing. Qingqing even intentionally played along and pinched Qin Wendian, causing all the maidens to laugh. Bai Qing watched everything from the back. A smile still hung on her face. The cold-blood emperor was like a little girl at this moment, revealing a radiant and innocent smile. She didn't say anything and only quietly watched everything. Being able to see her Wentian Gidge so happy and blissful, she was already very satisfied. If she could continue watching him like this, how beautiful would that be? Elder Sis Qing'er and Elder Sis Qingqing were both so beautiful and deeply in love with Wentian Gidge. They would definitely be able to live a very, very good life. Little Qing, come over here. Qin Wendian called out when he saw Bai Qing smiling foolishly at the back. Bai Qing started. She stared at Qin Wendian in a daze as she walked over and called out, Wentian Gidge. Qin Wendian stretched out his hand and tousled Bai Qing's hair. His gaze was filled with doting love. This little lass was still the same as when she was young. Her smile was so pure and beautiful, causing people to forget all their troubles. In the future, will you cultivate on the Myriad Devil Islands or follow Wentian Gidge? Qin Wendian gently asked. Can I follow Wentian Gidge? Bai Qing inclined her head and giggled foolishly. Naturally you can, as long as little lass Qing is willing. Qin Wendian rapped her head twice. In that case, I will follow Wentian Gidge to cultivate. Bai Qing giggled foolishly. But if you follow me, you might encounter danger. It won't be as safe as staying on the Myriad Devil Islands. Qin Wentian's voice was gentle. I'm not afraid. Bai Qing shook her head resolutely. Silly lass. Qin Wendian stared at Bai Qing as he thought back to when she was young. She was such a pure and kind young lady. It was unknown how much hardship she had to endure to reach her current state. From an ordinary mortal, she became the Blood Priestess, the Blood Emperor. Although Qin Wendian didn't see it personally, he could imagine how much hardship she had to go through. Everyone chatted for a long time before the beauties bid their farewells and left, returning to their own residences. Only Qin Wendian, Qing'er and Qingqing remained. Little rascal was also brought away by purgatory. He didn't want to be a hindrance here. Mo Qingqing laughed as she stared at Qin Wendian, causing Qin Wendian to shiver involuntarily. Staring at Mo Qingqing's smile, his heart shuddered. Despite knowing the answer, he still asked, Qingqing, what's wrong? There are so many beauties casting flirtatious glances at you. How do you feel? Mo Qingqing giggled. Earlier, although everyone was joking, given Qing'er and Mo Qingqing's intelligence, how could they not tell that if Qin Wendian nodded his head, at least half of the beauties here would fall in love with Qin Wendian? If not, why would they joke about him so casually? Luo Huan's personality could be said to be like this, but Nanfeng Xinga and Namhuang Yunxi were both holy maidens. Qin Wendian had a face filled with black lines. Mo Qingqing smiled sweetly when she saw Qin Wentian's expression. She walked towards Qin Wendian and helped Qin Wendian to straighten his robes. Her beautiful eyes that were as bright as the stars stared at Qin Wendian, filled with gentleness as she spoke. Actually, many of them are good girls. Elder Sister Qing and I both understand that there will be many good girls who like you. If you really like someone, Elder Sister Qing, and I won't blame you. It's fine as long as you are happy. Qin Wendian lowered his head and stared at Emo Qingqing's gentle eyes. They were so beautiful and clear, without any impurities, only the purest love. He then glanced at Qing who was beside him. Qing nodded her head lightly and didn't say anything. Qin Wendian's heart was filled with boundless gentleness. He pulled Emo Qingqing into his embrace and pulled Qing over as well, allowing them to lean against his chest as he spoke in a gentle voice. Silly lass. With a wife like this, what more could a husband ask for? Time flowed by. After the world was unified, the aftermath of the grand wedding of the Heaven Empyreans still existed. However, the war had truly calmed down. The various hegemonic powers were now under the direct control of Qin Wendian. How could there still be any large-scale battles in the immortal realms? The demons of the desolate mountains also behaved themselves. Everything seemed to be very peaceful. In the azure mystic immortal realms, there were some mysterious places where experts could be seen. Also, these experts were all supremely terrifying existences. These were all explorers from the supreme ancient immortal realms. At this moment, in the northern regions of the immortal realms, in the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom, in the depths of the immortal mountain of laws, there were many figures currently exploring the secrets of the Forbidden Ground. They saw many strange phenomena in the Forbidden Ground. For example, the zombies. Some of the zombies could actually attack and were extremely powerful. This simply didn't make sense. But the more this was so, the more interested they were. They continued exploring the depths of the immortal mountain of laws, arriving at the ruins of the Forbidden Ground. Relying on their powerful strength, they continued venturing deeper. After a very long time, they passed by many strange places. There were a few figures who spent several months here. In fact, they didn't even know where they were now. They simply couldn't imagine that there would actually be such a place in Azure Mystic that caused them to be trapped here. Today, the few of them came to a place. After they killed a few powerful zombies, they saw a gate. Chapter 1714. This gate was extremely demonic and mysterious, shining with a strange light, like a gate from hell. No one dared to enter it casually, nobody knew what was inside. The people standing outside the gate exchanged glances as their hearts pounded madly, unable to calm down. Should we enter? Someone asked. Do we need to report this to the Realm Lord? A person at the side replied. They had no idea what they would encounter if they entered. Hence, everyone was incomparably cautious. Let's go in and take a look first. The person at the side seemed very young. His eyes were sharp and he exuded a tyrannical aura. His silhouette flashed as he directly appeared in front of the gate. After that, he took a step forward and entered. The others followed after him and in an instant, their silhouettes vanished from this space. When they appeared in another space, everything changed. The sky here was dark and there was a sun hanging high up in the sky. However, this sun didn't exude the intent of a blazing sun. It was a black sun. The sun was dark and gloomy, enveloping the earth, causing the entire world to be filled with a gloomy aura. Although their cultivation bases were extremely high, surpassing the immortal emperor realm, they couldn't help but feel a sense of pressure in their hearts when they saw the black sun. There was also loneliness and desolation. Next to the sun in the sky, there were 9 black spheres that looked like dark stars. They revolved around the sun that was emitting a dark light. These star-like spheres exuded a gloomy and cold intent, causing them to shiver uncontrollably. Even with their powerful cultivation bases, they actually felt somewhat cold. Dusk of the Gods, ancient battlefield. A person spoke in a low voice. He didn't expect the legends to be true. There really was an ancient battlefield in the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms, the Dusk of the Gods. Where's the exit? At this moment, someone turned his head as his countenance instantly turned pale. He discovered that the gate had vanished. After they entered, there was no exit. Let's inform the Realm Lord. A person spoke. He took out his messaging crystal. Since they found this legendary place, there wouldn't be any lack of good fortune in this place. They didn't need to worry that others would be too strong. Right now, they were more worried about their safety. No one knew what they would encounter in this world. After exchanging glances, their silhouettes flickered as they moved forward. The terrain of this world was extremely strange. The entire land was riddled with holes. It was rumored that during the world-ending battle, a part of the world had been razed to the ground and everyone had perished. Such a strong death chi. After that, their pupils involuntarily constricted. They saw that on the ground, a silhouette had actually appeared. That person had been sitting there in a daze, his eyes were lifeless as he stared into the distance. The living dead. When they saw that person, they immediately knew that it was another living dead. However, this living dead's realm wasn't high. He was very ordinary and posed no threat to them. And so, they continued forward. Along the way, they saw many living corpses. They had no aura of life, but they truly existed. Some of the living corpses were even doing the same thing over and over again. They also saw a living corpse hugging a piece of clothing. Although the clothing was extremely ancient, it hadn't decayed. It was a woman's clothing. The living corpse hugged it tightly as if it was afraid of losing it. Their gazes gradually turned heavy. There were actually so many living corpses in this ancient battlefield? What did this mean? Could it be that those who died back then, there was someone who executed a heaven-defying innate technique that allowed them to continue living? However, they were using a different method, living corpses, to exist in this world. How tragic was this? At this moment, they suddenly felt a cold beam of light shooting over. The will of death enveloped their bodies. They turned their gazes in a certain direction, only to see a silhouette directly soaring up into the sky. The silhouette roared, "Kill!" This voice was filled with boundless killing intent. That silhouette's speed was incomparably fast, like lightning, directly rushing towards one of the Empyreans. That Empyrean instantly unleashed a torrential rain of swords. He pointed his finger downwards and instantly, the radiance of a holy sword descended from the heavens, capable of destroying everything in its path. With a poochie sound, that Empyrean's silhouette was directly cleaved into two as he coldly snorted. "Kill, kill, kill." Another cold voice filled with killing intent rang out. This voice was incomparably desolate, and there were two voices, as though they came from two different people, yet they completely overlapped. Two bolts of lightning continued shooting towards the Empyrean in the air. It was none other than that Empyrean who was cleaved into two. The countenances of the Empyreans drastically changed. They had just relaxed their vigilance when they saw such a shocking scene. This was especially so for the Empyrean who was attacked. His body transformed into a sharp sword as he pierced forward. Only by doing so could he evade this attack. Boom! A gigantic black hand directly grabbed hold of the sharp sword. The sword penetrated through it, slicing into the Empyrean's body. However, the other half of the Empyrean's body blasted out with a punch, causing the sound of shattering to ring out. An incomparably tyrannical strength caused the sword to shatter as a scream of misery rang out. That Empyrean's body was smashed into pieces as blood rained down from the sky. This scene was too terrifying. The other Empyreans were all stunned. After that, they saw the other half of the Empyrean's body shouting, "Kill, kill, kill, kill." "We can't kill him, retreat." The Empyreans' silhouettes flickered as they retreated. They actually didn't dare to fight. It wasn't that they couldn't win against the Empyrean, but rather, the Empyrean was simply unkillable. How could they fight? The Empyrean's body was already dead. That Empyrean's sword had already cleaved the Empyrean into two, yet it was useless. The Empyrean's two halves attacked at the same time. Just the sight of this scene caused the hearts of the Empyrean to tremble. "Kill, kill, kill." The cold voice seemed to penetrate through the ancient times, resounding through the air. Many Empyreans inclined their heads and stared at the sky. After that, numerous Empyreans soared up into the air, rushing towards the Empyrean who just appeared. At this moment, the Empyreans' countenances were as pale as paper. They only felt that doomsday had arrived. How could this be? How could this world be so terrifying? Not long after, screams of misery resounded through this entire space. Under the black sun, the Empyreans who tried to scout the area all died here. In addition, since they could reach this place, it was clear that the others could as well. More and more news was transmitted to the supreme ancient immortal realms. For a period of time, many peak powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms moved out. The news started to circulate, causing a huge commotion. Compared to the supreme ancient immortal realms, Azure Mystic was as calm as ever. Since this was a forbidden ground, no one in Azure Mystic would be able to enter it. They had no way to know what happened there. Qin Wenyan was still in Heaven Empyrean City, waiting for news. With so many experts arriving in Azure Mystic, it was impossible for there to be no news. In truth, he hoped that ancient Azure Mystic wouldn't appear. If not, it wouldn't be a good thing for the current Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. He suddenly thought of something. The secret recorded in the Wenxin Temple was something that was covered in dust to the current Azure Mystic. The sealed Azure Mystic Immortal Realms wouldn't know about it. But what about the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms? The Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms had boundless history. They would surely have a great deal of information regarding this world-ending battle. Maybe they had never given up on searching for it. Hence, in the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms, the world-ending battle was definitely not a secret. At this moment, in the Heaven Empyrean Palace, the Southern Phoenix Matriarch and the Dark North Immortal Emperor came over to seek guidance on some questions regarding Empyreans. Qin Wenyan suddenly felt like making a trip to the forbidden ground of the Immortal Law Mountain in the northern regions. Back then, it was none other than that old freak who sent him into the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms. But now, even Qin Wenyan wasn't confident that he would be able to find that old freak. That old freak was simply too mysterious. Palace Lord, this subordinate has something to report. Su Li's voice drifted over from outside. Qin Wenyan replied, "Speak." According to the news, a group of mysterious experts suddenly appeared in the eastern regions of our immortal realms. This subordinate suspects that they are from the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms. Su Li spoke. "Got it. You can leave for now. Continue to pay close attention to the movements in the immortal realms. Once there's any news, report back to me immediately." Qin Wenyan spoke. "Yes, Palace Lord." Su Li acknowledged and left. Several days later, Su Li made another report. Many more experts appeared in the central regions of the immortal realms. And after some time, Su Li came to report again. Mysterious experts also appeared in the southern regions of the immortal realms. However, they didn't cause any commotion and were extremely low profile. For a very long period of time, Su Li continued to make many reports regarding the arrival of mysterious experts. Also, the frequency of the reports grew more and more frequent. And this was only the power they discovered. There were still many that they hadn't discovered yet. Qin Wenyan was very clear what this meant. A large number of experts from the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms had arrived. What should come would eventually come. Qin Wenyan passed down his orders, telling the various powers to pay close attention to the movements of the mysterious experts and find their final destination. It wasn't easy to track the movements of Empyreans. However, the Heaven Empyrean gave the order. Countless powers in the immortal realms became spies, constantly sending news to Qin Wenyan's Heaven Empyrean Palace in Heaven Empyrean City. With regards to the movements of the mysterious experts in the immortal realms, there was a common point. That was, they appeared most frequently in the northern regions of the immortal realms. Also, their locations were the former Hokage Sengoku Kingdom. The target continued to shrink. Qin Wenyan told the Dark North Immortal Emperor to pay close attention to the movements of the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom. There was no need to doubt the influence of the Dark North Immortal Emperor in the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom. Very soon, he found the location where the mysterious experts left their last traces. Their final destination was the forbidden ground of the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom, in the depths of the Mountain of Laws. After Qin Wenyan learned of this news, he was completely stunned. The location was actually the forbidden ground of the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom. Within the Heaven Empyrean Palace, Qin Wenyan stood there speechlessly for a long time. The forbidden ground of the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom, this place was too familiar. Could this be a coincidence? Qin Wendian silently mused. Chapter 1715. The forbidden ground of the Dark North Immortal Mountain was rarely visited by people. This was especially so for the depths of the forbidden ground. Back then, Qin Wendian also entered there by mistake. But now, in the depths of the forbidden grounds of the Dark North Immortal Mountain, in a place where outsiders couldn't see, a large number of experts were gathered. Experts were as common as the clouds, and these experts all belonged to different camps. Right now, not only were there Empyreans here, many immortal emperors were also sent here to carry out orders. Empyreans, even to many powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms, they were considered rare. For example, the lifelong realm was boundlessly vast, but how many Empyreans were there? Even the World Palace lords of the 9 world palaces were merely characters at this level. Naturally, if one were to look at the entire supreme ancient immortal realms, there were simply too many Empyreans. The supreme ancient immortal realms were simply too vast. There were countless world overlords here, and Empyreans were like grains of sand in the Ganges River. On an ancient peak in the Immortal Law Mountain, Qin Wendian arrived. He stood at the peak of the Immortal Law Mountain and stared into the distance. Although he was now at the Empyrean realm, his immortal sense wasn't invincible in the forbidden ground. It was restricted. In the air far away, a resplendent light suddenly flashed as a group of experts appeared in the air. They were all clad in resplendent robes, and the person in the center looked extremely young. However, his eyes seemed to be golden in color and contained an incomparably terrifying penetrative power. A single glance from him seemed to be able to pierce through space. He took out a divine weapon. It was an incomparably gigantic ancient bell. With a wave of his hand, the ancient bell flew forward, entering the misty formation of the forbidden ground. In the next instant, a booming sound of the great Tao rang out from the depths of the forbidden ground. The misty space suddenly shone with an incomparably resplendent golden light. In the next instant, the glow of millions of runes bloomed in the air, resembling bolts of lightning that arced through the void, containing the might of the great Tao of heaven and earth within. The bell of the great path continued ringing. Rays of light that pierced through the darkness appeared in the fog. After that, the ancient bell appeared in everyone's field of vision once again. This time, it became extremely large, directly breaking through the shackles of the fog formation and descending into the sky. It released tens of millions of rays of golden light that enveloped the vast and boundless forbidden area. The fog continued to be dispersed. As the bell of the great path rang, the space gradually became clear. Only the endless golden light of lightning could be seen flickering within. His immortal sense was no longer obstructed, and his vision grew clearer. Many silhouettes appeared before him. This forbidden ground wasn't as vast as he had imagined. He could see everything with a single glance. Everything was because of the formation. Qin Wendian saw a large number of experts gathered together. They stood in front of a door, and there seemed to be a beam of dark light piercing through the sky. A part of the sky fell there, as though it could lead to another world. The Doomsday Battlefield. Qin Wendian thought of the content recorded in the ancient records as he sighed in his heart. Ancient Azure Mystic, the Doomsday Battlefield. It was buried by a supreme existence using a heaven-defying technique. Now that the seal on Azure Mystic was loosened, it seemed like that existence intentionally wanted the Doomsday Battlefield to be exposed to the world. If not, given his heaven-defying abilities, how would he be able to find this place? Old freak, does this have anything to do with you? Qin Wendian silently mused. Back then, he met that madman in this forbidden ground. But now, there were no traces of that madman at all. The ancient bell flew back, transforming into a palm-sized bell that was held in the palm of the young man. Many experts turned their gazes over, and when they saw the young man, their eyes flashed as though they were trying to guess his identity. Such a divine treasure, he must definitely be an extraordinary character. We pay our respects to Sir Wang. An Empyrean walked out. He seemed to know the identity of this young man and his group as he bowed to him. Although he was also an Empyrean, this Empyrean's attitude towards Sir Wang could only be described as respectful. In any place, there would always be a strict hierarchy. This was even more so in the supreme ancient immortal realms. This point could be seen clearly from this world. Sir Wang. Many people were guessing as their eyes flashed. After that, the eyes of many involuntarily narrowed as shock filled their hearts. All of them walked up and clasped their hands. "We pay our respects to Sir Wang." They didn't know Sir Wang's name, but they only knew that he was surnamed Wang and which clan he came from. That was already enough. Sir Wang broke through the illusion formation with a single thought. Truly admirable. Someone praised. That Sir Wang still stood in the air. His attitude was cold. He who was holding onto the ancient bell seemed a little arrogant. Just a mere formation, a smokescreen. Sir Wang's voice was as sharp and filled with arrogance. As long as one heard his words, they would know what sort of person he was. His pride was ingrained deep in his bones and could be seen from his demeanor. However, he naturally had the qualifications to do so. Even in the supreme ancient immortal realms, his clan could already stand at an extremely high position. But although he was arrogant, he was very clear about what he came here for. This time, his clan entrusted everyone to him. He naturally had to obtain some harvest. Did the scouts send any news? Sir Wang asked. Yes, we've already ascertained that this is the legendary world-ending battlefield. Someone spoke. There are many zombies there. They seem to be those who died in the world-ending battle back then. There are also some who are extremely powerful. We can't kill them unless we directly crush them into dust. Many of the people we sent here have already died. There's no news at all. There's one more point. That person continued. This gate is a one-way gate. After entering, it will vanish. Currently, no one has found the exit yet. In that case, continue to scout. Sir Wang calmly spoke. Many people aren't willing to go there anymore. That person spoke in a light voice. Sir Wang's eyes flashed. He instantly understood. Even for Empyreans, there was an extremely high possibility that they would die if they entered. Let alone the fact that many powers were using immortal emperors to scout the area, it was basically a path of death. Those subordinates most probably didn't want to send themselves to death. Although they were curious about the ancient battlefield, their lives were more important. Aren't there many immortal emperors in this immortal realms? Just send them there directly. Sir Wang calmly spoke. His tone was extremely calm. It was like in his eyes, the lives of the immortal emperors in this immortal realms weren't even worth mentioning. It was basically insufficient to cause any ripples in his heart. That person's eyes flashed. At this moment, another person spoke. Senior, you might not know this, but right now, the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms has a new ruler. He calls himself the Heaven Empyrean and forbids people from the supreme ancient immortal realms from doing anything in the immortal realms. Before this, many powerful characters from the supreme ancient immortal realms have already been killed by this Heaven Empyrean. Heaven Empyrean, what arrogant words. That young man's eyes flashed with disdain. He calmly spoke. After the world-ending battle, Azure Mystic is no longer the ancient Azure Mystic. It has also been sealed for so many years and is nothing but a weak and desolate place. Yet, you still dare to proclaim yourself as the Heaven Empyrean? Truly a frog at the bottom of a well. Since you are the Heaven Empyrean of Azure Mystic, tell him to send immortal emperors from Azure Mystic to scout the way. He won't give the command. At this moment, Qin Wendian spoke from afar. The eyes of the young man surnamed Wang turned over, staring at Qin Wendian. The sharpness in his eyes caused people to feel a sense of fear. "Who are you?" he asked. "The frog at the bottom of a well that you are referring to." Qin Wendian replied. "Heaven Empyrean?" The young man surnamed Wang mockingly laughed. Calling himself the Heaven Empyrean in Azure Mystic? What arrogant words. Do you know what sort of character the Heaven Lord of the ancient battlefield was? Although his status was transcendent, he had read through the ancient records and learned of the history from countless years ago. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart and worship the World Annihilation Heaven Lord. He wanted nothing more than to be able to see the ancient Heaven Lord slaying all heavenly deities in a single battle, burying an entire world. As the Heaven Lord, he wasn't willing to lower his head even if he had to die in battle. I don't know. However, since I'm the Overlord of Azure Mystic, I naturally have to protect it. Most probably, the Heaven Lord was the same back then as well. Qin Wenyin calmly spoke. In that case, let's see if you have the ability to be mentioned in the same breath as the imperishable Heaven Lord. The young man waved his hand. The divine bell in his hand flew out and instantly expanded in size, transforming into a gigantic golden ancient bell that radiated the might of the great Tao. In an instant, heavenly might enveloped everything as boundless destructive runes and lightning locked onto Qin Wenyin. There was no way for him to evade. Qin Wentian's body was enveloped by boundless runic light. His fiend god body, Buddha and devil body, the Vajra Holy will protecting him. All sorts of defenses were unleashed, resembling an indestructible law body. Boundless runic lightning blasted over as crackling sounds of destruction rang out unceasingly, penetrating through everything. Qin Wentian's defenses were shattered. He leaped through the air and retreated. However, the might of the runes of the great Tao penetrated through his body and he was instantly flung far away. With a groan of misery, many cracks appeared on his body and he was on the verge of shattering. Powerful undying energy and life force simultaneously healed his injured body. He stared at the divine bell in the distance as his heart trembled. The might of the great Tao contained within the bell was unblockable and was definitely a supreme treasure. Although this young man was powerful, he most probably wasn't strong enough to unleash the full might of the bell. If not, his body would have already been shattered by a single strike. There were too many experts in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Now that the entrance to ancient Azure Mystic has appeared, all the experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms gathered here. It was unknown if this would lead to a calamity. The Heaven Empyrean? The young man mockingly spoke. But at this moment, an Empyrean beside him transmitted his voice over to remind him, "Young master, now that the seal on Azure Mystic has loosened, that major character is still someone from Azure Mystic. He has sealed Azure Mystic for so many years, most probably he doesn't wish for Azure Mystic to be destroyed. It's best not to antagonize that major character." The eyes of the young man flashed. Just when he was about to act, he thought about it and nodded his head. Although he didn't know what sort of character that major character was, he was still a demon after all. Since this was the case, he might as well spare the immortal emperors of Azure Mystic this time around. With a wave of his hand, the divine treasure bell flew back into his palm. He stared at everyone as he spoke. "If no one is willing to lead the way, let's wait for more powers to gather before we enter together." Chapter 1716. The name of this young man was Wang Yi. His clan was extremely powerful in the supreme ancient immortal realms and wasn't something the overlords of a world could compare to. Even for ordinary world overlords, they would be extremely polite to him. One could say that although he was only at the half-step world overlord realm, it was only a matter of time before he stepped into the world overlord realm. There was no need for him to be respectful when facing world overlords, he only needed to treat them normally. Hence, a mere Empyrean character like the Azure Mystic Heavenly Sovereign was nothing in his eyes. If it wasn't for the reminder from the people beside him, he would have directly acted to kill Qin Wenyin. Sending the immortal emperors of the Azure Mystic immortal realms to their deaths, to him, was just an insignificant matter. In his clan, it was unknown how many immortal emperors would risk their lives for him with a single command. It was just that he didn't bring so many people with him today. Immortal emperors, their cultivation bases weren't high enough. In this place, it was useless for him to have so many immortal emperors. From a certain perspective, Qin Wenyin did indeed have the qualifications to not care about this Heaven Empyrean of Azure Mystic. Qin Wentian's heart was heavy. It wasn't because he was injured but because of the treasures the young man brought with him, as well as the meaning behind everyone's respectful attitude. The status of this young man was extremely transcendent. Azure Mystic had attracted the attention of the hegemonic powers of the supreme ancient immortal realms. How could his heart not be heavy? His gaze turned to the person who spoke earlier. His gaze was extremely sharp, directly piercing through space, staring at that person. That expert was also coincidentally looking in Qin Wentian's direction. With just a single glance, he felt the heavens and earth changing. His consciousness actually fell into a trance, entering an independent space, a true illusion space. It was like he saw a pair of incomparably demonic eyes. Those were the eyes of astral souls, the eyes of true illusion. Under the power of source origins, a single glance could create illusions in the world. A crisp sound rang out as that person screamed in misery, dying on the spot. The people around him all retreated, their countenances paled as they stared at Qin Wenin. I've never forbidden people from the supreme ancient immortal realms from doing anything. Those who intentionally started a war should be executed. Qin Wenin emotionlessly spoke. He didn't ask who the young man was and didn't care about his identity. Naturally, he also didn't care about Wang Yi's attitude. This was Azure Mystic, his will was the law. Even if Wang Yi had a super powerful magic weapon. The Celestial Emperor didn't attack Wang Yi, but turned to kill this person. Moreover, he deliberately explained it. Could it be that he's afraid of Wang Yi? Thinking of Wang Yi's identity and how powerful he was, everyone nodded. It seemed like that was the case. At this moment, Qin Wenin continued, however, the experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms are not allowed to wreak havoc in Azure Mystic. No one. The word anyone naturally referred to something. No matter what your identity is or what sort of experts you are from the supreme ancient immortal realms, this Wang Yi of the Wang clan was naturally included. He who was forced back by a single strike didn't show any signs of weakness at all. He immediately changed the topic and spoke such domineering words, causing many people to have strange expressions on their faces. Was he not worried that Wang Yi would kill him on the spot in a fit of rage? As the Heaven Empyrean of the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms, Qin Wenin has killed many Empyreans before. But no matter what, he was only the leader of the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. How high was Wang Yi's status? In addition to the terrifying divine weapons and treasures he had, it was very possible for him to kill the Heaven Empyrean of the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. Wang Yi calmly glanced at Qin Wenin, his eyes were filled with mockery. He decided not to act against the immortal emperors of Azure Mystic because of the respect he had for that expert who sealed the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms. As for a mere Qin Wenin, would he even care about him? Qin Wentian's words were merely self-mockery in his eyes. It was laughable. Hence, there was no need for him to care about it as it would be beneath his status. Qin Wenin stood on the ancient peak, remaining at the entrance of the forbidden ground. His white robes fluttered in the wind, exuding a carefree aura. For the next period of time, more and more experts rushed here. Many Empyreans were from the supreme ancient immortal realms. Other than this, there were also some experts with transcendent statuses. They were the same as Wang Yi, having terrifying origins. Many Empyreans were extremely respectful and humble when they saw them. There was no exception, all of them exuded a transcendent aura. Regardless of their age, all of them were the same. With different statuses, the aura they exuded would naturally be different as well. In the former forbidden ground of the Dark North Immortal Mountain, with a single glance, one could see experts from different camps here. Qin Wenin, who stood on the ancient peak, felt his heart grow heavier when he saw this scene. Such a terrifying power could easily destroy the people of Azure Mystic with a wave of their hands. In addition, he basically had no way to stop them. There were simply too many Empyreans here, true experts were as common as the clouds. At this moment, Empyreans who were extremely rare even in the lifelong realm were like the multitude of mortals, not conspicuous at all. Only those characters with the same status as Wang Yi had transcendent and lofty statuses. Qin Wenin heard the discussions of many people. He knew that these people were from the heavenly deity race of the supreme ancient immortal realms. Heavenly deities. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. From the ancient records in the Wenxin Temple, he knew that those characters who descended from the heavens and destroyed ancient Azure Mystic were all known as heavenly deities, lofty and unexcelled in the world. Right now, these experts who came to this forbidden ground also claimed to be from the heavenly deity race. Could it be that their ancestors were those heavenly deities from the past? Or could it be that the heavenly deity race was the title given to those supreme hegemonic powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms? If this was the case, Qin Wenyan also understood why Wang Yi had such a powerful divine weapon in his hands. People from the heavenly deity race. Just this name alone was sufficient to shock countless experts in the supreme ancient immortal realms. In the supreme ancient immortal realms, most probably they were all characters at the peak, let alone in this Azure Mystic that was sealed. How could such characters not be lofty and lofty? Since the heavenly deity race sent these characters to Azure Mystic to deal with the matter in the Forbidden Ground, there was no need to doubt their strength. For those experts from the heavenly deity race who appeared, there were even some who manifested strange phenomena. Earlier, Wang Yi's eyes were golden. It was unknown what kind of ability that was. There were also some who actually had wings on their bodies. That didn't seem to be a cultivation art or innate technique, they seemed to be born with wings. Also, there were incomparably resplendent complicated runes on the wings, resembling the runes of the Great Tao. Qin Wenyan guessed that this most probably had something to do with the bloodline of their heavenly deity race. The heavenly deity race had an extremely powerful inheritance. If their bloodlines were to awaken, they wouldn't be like those unknown bloodlines in the lower world. Their bloodlines would be truly supremely powerful. We can enter now. At this moment, an expert from the heavenly deity race spoke. Right now, the experts gathered here were already a terrifying force. He didn't want to wait any longer. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man. He had a muscular build and his palms were larger than ordinary people. Everyone, let's move out. The man with a pair of wings on his back spoke. The wings slowly flapped, and even though the runic light on them didn't light up, it still gave off an extremely terrifying feeling. It was as though as long as the runic light shone, it would be able to unleash a terrifying might. There will definitely be more experts coming later. But if we can't even obtain anything with such a lineup, it would be meaningless no matter how many experts we send. Another person who looked extremely young spoke. Although he was a male, he was extremely handsome and exuded a demonic sense of beauty. Such elegance was something many females couldn't compare to. He was definitely a handsome man. Are you worried that your good fortune would be snatched away by others? A cold voice drifted over. The man who spoke exuded a terrifyingly sharp aura. Just by casually standing there, he gave off a lofty and aloof feeling, as though he was extremely lonely. At the center of his brows, there was a vertical line that looked extremely demonic. It was like a line that would occasionally move, as though it could open up and transform into a pair of eyes. One figure after another moved forward. The experts of the heavenly deity race took the lead. In an instant, the great army was mobilized. Countless experts followed behind them, preparing to enter together with them. It was as though they were the followers of the heavenly deity race. The experts from the heavenly deity race from the supreme ancient immortal realms all had terrifying influence in their respective regions. The people from these regions naturally followed the experts from the heavenly deity race. Right now, they already knew that ancient Azure Mystic was filled with danger. If they followed behind these people, they would naturally have a higher chance of survival. If even the experts from the heavenly deity race couldn't deal with them, they would die for sure. The experts from the various powers all entered in a line, entering the forbidden ground. The experts from the heavenly deity race opened up the path while countless people followed after them. All of them entered the forbidden ground, stepping into that unknown place. To Qin Wenyan, that forbidden ground was also an unknown place. However, he knew that there would definitely be someone who knew some secrets. Back then, that crazy old freak had always been in this forbidden ground. It was impossible for him to not know the secrets of this place. In addition, Qin Wenyan suspected that if it wasn't for that crazy old freak leaving, no one would be able to unravel the secrets of this forbidden ground and find this gate. Even the Empyreans from the heavenly deity race wouldn't be able to do so. Empyreans from the heavenly deity race definitely wouldn't be able to reach the level of that crazy old freak. The number of experts continued to decrease until all of them entered. Qin Wenyan stood on the ancient peak for a long time, quietly watching everything. Finally, he stepped out and also moved forward, directly passing through that mysterious gate. In the next instant, his silhouette vanished from his original location and appeared in another part of the sky. The sky was dark, the sun was black, and there were 9 gigantic black rocks that resembled constellations. They shone with a mysterious luster, giving off a heavy sense of pressure. Ancient azure mystic, the battlefield of the apocalypse? Qin Wenyan inclined his head and stared at the gloomy sky. Even the sun was black in color and radiated a sinister aura. It truly felt like the end of the world. Back then, how terrifying was the world-ending war in ancient azure mystic exactly? Even the sun had turned black in color and was buried by the sun. Chapter 1717. The experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms continued forward. They were similarly enveloped by the sinister aura, but their hearts were also filled with fervor, filled with intense anticipation. This was truly the battlefield recorded in the ancient records of their clans. This was especially so for the descendants of the heavenly deity race. Their records were the clearest when it came to the world-ending battle in ancient azure mystic back then. They knew much more compared to others. Back then, how many heaven-defying characters died here, including the heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms? The heaven-defying divine weapons and treasures of these heavenly deities were also buried together with them. Ancient heavenly deities naturally had divine depositories on them. These were all heaven-defying treasures. In addition, during the world-ending battle in ancient azure mystic, how many transcendent powers of ancient azure mystic were annihilated? Some of these powers were as powerful as the heavenly deity race. What sort of divine depositories did these powers have? Everything was simply unimaginable. If they could obtain some of the divine depositories left behind by ancient azure mystic, it would definitely be an extremely great opportunity for their clans to grow stronger. There were simply too many experts in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Everyone hoped that they could stand at the peak. However, given how vast the world is, how many supreme experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms were there? The sound of air being torn apart rang out as the experts moved towards the ancient battlefield in ancient azure mystic. In this desolate world, there were no signs of life. The atmosphere was gloomy and filled with despair. There were zombies appearing in the immortal sense. These zombies were all very quiet and were busy with their own matters. It was like they had been doing this for millions of years. They had no thoughts of their own, only their obsession before they died, unwilling to fade away. When the powerful zombies saw the arrival of so many experts, their empty eyes stared up at the sky. In an instant, a fearsome killing intent radiated from them as they directly soared up into the air. Kill. Similar to what the scouts encountered back then, many zombies directly rushed up into the air, not fearing death at all. That expert with a vertical line between his brows directly opened his third eye. The vertical line between his brows opened, transforming into a pair of vertical eyes that directly shot out a beam of light, cleaving apart the heavens and earth. With a poochie sound, a living corpse that was rushing up into the air was directly cleaved apart. However, his movements didn't stop. His body that was cleaved apart didn't feel any pain at all. After being cleaved apart, he continued to kill his way up into the sky, causing countless people behind him to feel their hair stand on end. Were all the living corpses here so terrifying? They were even scarier than normal people. Since they were already dead, they were naturally difficult to kill. That expert coldly snorted, and the light between his brows became even brighter. A beam of annihilation shot out, directly enveloping the two halves of the body. With a soft poochie sound, the body of the living corpse shattered into countless fragments that dissipated between heaven and earth. There was no one who couldn't be killed, even if they were the living corpses, as long as they were strong enough. The others also attacked one after another. The person who was born with wings was extremely powerful. The wings behind him only trembled slightly, and in just an instant, his body suddenly turned into thousands of phantoms. Incomparably dazzling light from the wings slashed out. It was as though the entire world was filled with his figure. All of them were his wings of the great Tao, cutting the incoming living corpses into pieces. He quietly floated in the air, his body still in the same place, flapping his wings as though he had never attacked before. Killing transcendence is a piece of cake. Qin Wenin watched the battle between the experts from the heavenly god race. He naturally could tell that these living corpses had extraordinary strength and could be said to be undying. But even so, they were still easily killed. Ordinary Empyreans couldn't even withstand a single strike before them. The experts from the heavenly god race were transcendent existences. Very swiftly, the sounds of killing faded away. Those Empyrean living corpses were all killed, their bodies shattered into pieces, no longer existing. Let's go. The experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms continued on their way. On the way, more and more living corpses soared up into the air, killing their way towards them. However, all of them were destroyed by the experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms. Just the Empyreans from the heavenly god race from the supreme ancient immortal realms, none of the living corpses could obstruct them. At the very least, the living corpses at the Empyrean realm were far from sufficient. They basically couldn't pose much of an obstacle to them. At this moment, everyone came to a desolate mountain range. This mountain range was filled with an ancient aura of death, boundlessly vast and boundlessly deep. The experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms weren't moved, they directly entered. How could they be afraid? They were prepared to continue forward, exploring the secrets of the ancient battlefield and searching for good fortune. At a certain location in the desolate mountain range, a figure suddenly appeared, blocking the path of everyone. No one could see clearly how he appeared, it was like he had long appeared there. But earlier, the immortal senses of everyone couldn't detect his existence. After that, more and more figures appeared. Their robes were tattered and some of them had flaws in their bodies. Either their arms were destroyed or they lost half their faces. Their expressions were extremely malevolent and terrifying. The one who caused the hearts of everyone to tremble the most was a female. She had a countenance so beautiful that it could even shame the moon and flowers. However, there was actually a terrifying scar on her from head to toe. It was so shocking that no one dared to stare at her. Seems like an ancient power from ancient Azure mystic was destroyed here back then. These living corpses still have their obsessions from when they were alive, unwilling to leave. What deep emotions they have. Someone spoke in a low voice. However, these Empyreans from the supreme ancient immortal realms wouldn't allow anyone to obstruct their path. Wang Yi took out that terrifying great bell. With a wave of his hand, the great bell flew forward. It was incomparably huge, enveloping the boundless heavens and earth. Destructive lightning shot out, annihilating the space. The sound of an ancient bell resounded through the heavens and earth, like the death knell of death. Many of the living dead were directly destroyed, their corpses not even remaining, completely vanishing into thin air. Since they are already dead, why is there a need to leave their obsessions in the mortal world? It's time for them to leave. A terrifying phenomenon manifested behind another Empyrean from the heavenly deity race. Beams of light from the great Tao shot out, destroying everything in their path. The Empyreans from the supreme ancient immortal realms all rushed forward, destroying all the living corpses. Pucci! At this moment, an incomparably resplendent killing light suddenly radiated out from the void. In an instant, several supreme experts of the supreme ancient immemorial realms were killed on the spot, their bodies disintegrating into dust. The expressions of those experts changed when they saw the sudden death of several supreme experts, as vigilance flashed in their eyes. Chi-chi! More beams of killing light shot out from the void. That Empyrean who had a look of wariness in his eyes screamed in agony as his body was severed from the waist. The other Empyreans all hurriedly retreated, but the sounds of explosions rang out unceasingly as more and more Empyreans died. Countless experts rushed over in that direction, but they only saw that the beams of killing light were formless and formless, shuttling through the void as more and more people died. Boom! The bell chimes of the great Tao suddenly rang out. Wang Yi controlled the ancient divine bell to descend, enveloping the heavens and earth, destroying everything. A deafening sound of collision rang out. The ancient bell seemed to have been struck by an incomparably powerful force. After that, on the desolate land ahead, a figure appeared. This person only had half a face and was extremely malevolent. His back was facing everyone, giving off a sense of loneliness. The hearts of everyone trembled. This was the power of a world overlord. When this living corpse was alive, he must have been a world overlord existence. Since he has already died, he should return. Senior, why must you be so stubborn? Wang Yi spoke. However, as the sound of his voice faded, the living corpse's silhouette had already vanished. Wang Yi's eyes gleamed with a terrifying golden light as a golden killing domain manifested in the surroundings. The ancient bell radiated a supreme might, sweeping through everything. At this moment, everyone finally saw the killing light of the void. Within the golden domain, the movements of the undead seemed to have been slowed down, becoming extremely clear. That killing light was none other than the undead himself. He was able to execute the killing of the void. He was invisible and formless. He was able to blend into the void. Attack! Wang Yi roared. The ancient bell radiated an incomparably resplendent light of the great Tao that expanded frenziedly, enveloping this entire space. Even if one escaped into the void within the space enveloped by the ancient bell, they wouldn't be able to escape the killing might of the ancient bell. Tens of thousands of beams of destructive light of the great Tao shot out from the ancient bell. Booming sounds rang out unceasingly as the ancient bell vibrated, shaking the entire space. With a poochie sound, Wang Yi groaned in pain. He felt that he couldn't hold on any longer. If this continued on, although his divine weapons and treasures were powerful enough, he wouldn't be able to control them. He would be injured from the impact. Why are you still not attacking? Wang Yi spoke. Finally, the ancient bell was forced back. Wang Yi coughed out blood. Once the living corpse appeared before him, it wanted to kill him on the spot. Wang Yi's expression was cold to the extreme. His golden eyes gleamed with a resplendent light that enveloped this space. His eyes seemed to shoot out two heaven-splitting swords, slashing apart his opponent. But even so, he was still heavily injured. Blood flowed from his golden eyes. An expert from the heavenly deity race clad in snow-white robes took out a white feather fan. With a wave of his fan, a terrifying cold energy of the great Tao manifested in the air, sealing everything in ice. A living corpse appeared, his body covered in layers of frost. The winged expert from the heavenly deity race flapped his wings and vanished without a trace, directly appearing at the location where his opponent was. His figure transformed into a myriad of illusory lights as a silver spear suddenly appeared in his hands. He consecutively unleashed a myriad of spear arts, causing the space around him to be lacerated. That living corpse's body was pierced through repeatedly, but it seemed like he didn't feel anything. With a single step, he vanished again and directly appeared beside that expert, unleashing another attack. The winged expert from the heavenly deity race was greatly shocked. His wings of the great Tao enveloped the entire space, radiating boundless light. After that, everyone saw his body trembling madly, flashing unceasingly in the air. Finally, with a thunderous boom, the body of that expert from the heavenly deity race was injured and was forced back. Even his wings of the great Tao were damaged. Resplendent light flashed. The wings of the great Tao gradually recovered to their original state. As for that world overlord-level living corpse, he actually vanished completely. These experts from the heavenly deity race rely on their innate techniques and supreme divine weapons. They actually have the strength to annihilate world overlords. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. However, the feeling that this living corpse world overlord gave him was somewhat weak. He merely didn't fear death and seemed extremely powerful. However, The world overlord had lost his spiritual chi and wasn't able to unleash his full strength. Chapter 17:18. Blood flowed from the corner of Wang Yi's mouth. His eyes gleamed with sharpness. As expected of the ancient battlefield, they actually encountered a world overlord zombie so quickly. If this world overlord zombie had intelligence, he most probably wouldn't be so easy to deal with. Cultivation realms could allow one to comprehend a world heart and give birth to a heaven heart mandate. This was definitely extremely terrifying. A heaven heart mandate was also known as heaven's will. In the truest sense, it had surpassed the Empyrean realm and reached another level. However, since they came here from the supreme ancient immortal realms, they naturally came prepared. How could they retreat? Their powerful immortal senses extended forward, exploring the boundlessly vast desolate mountain range. There seemed to be no end to this place, it was boundlessly vast. They also understood that for a truly powerful power, their territory would naturally be boundless. The heavenly deity race they were from was the same as well. Although it was said to be a race, it was actually comparable to an entire world. After countless years of development, how strong would a race be? How large would it be? This was simply unimaginable. Their population was already extremely terrifying. Hence, the larger the desolate land, the higher the chances of them encountering good fortune. Many Empyreans who followed them felt their hearts shaking. Even though they have cultivated for many years and have already entered the Empyrean realm, they still found it hard to maintain their calmness under this heavy pressure. This was especially so when that world overlord zombie appeared earlier. Many people have already died. The experts here could easily sweep through an entire world. Each of them was extremely terrifying, but in this desolate land, they seemed extremely tiny and insignificant. Under the dark sun, they continued moving forward in a small area. If one looked down from the sun, they would be able to see that they were like tiny particles moving about. In the center of the desolate land, there were also many similarly tiny figures. They were scattered in all directions, quietly standing there, as though they have been guarding this place for countless years. Those quietly standing figures seemed to have discovered something. Their empty eyes suddenly gleamed with a sinister light filled with killing intent. After that, their bodies moved, moving towards a certain direction. Halt! Almost at the same time, the experts from the deity race who entered from the outside world waved their hands and said. They felt uneasy, as if they had entered a wasteland where danger lurked in every corner. On the way forward, this feeling of uneasiness grew even stronger. A figure flickered and appeared in their vision silently. This figure was in tatters and his body was pierced through. There was no flesh or blood within his body, and his eyes didn't have the luster of a living person. Clearly, this was a living corpse. Back then in the ancient battlefield where Azure Mystic was destroyed, there were many people who died but their souls didn't scatter. Could it be that the imperishable Heaven Lord used some heaven-defying methods to resurrect them as living corpses? More figures appearing before their eyes, surrounding the experts who entered the ancient battlefield. Before these people acted, it was impossible to ascertain how strong they were. However, the uneasiness in the hearts of the experts had already reached a peak. At that time, that world overlord also silently appeared in the ancient battlefield like this. If there were several world overlord level living corpses among the people who appeared, what kind of terrifying consequences would there be? They didn't dare to think any further. Maybe, given their Empyrean cultivation bases, wanting to search for good fortune in this ancient battlefield was simply wishful thinking. Poochie! At this moment, someone's body was directly severed from the waist. That person didn't even have the time to react. He lowered his head and stared at the lower half of his body as a look of boundless terror appeared on his face. An incomparably miserable voice rang out. He only felt terror in his heart. The others were also trembling as they stared at the scene before them. But in the next instant, they saw more and more people being sliced apart. This entire space seemed to have transformed into a world that was being sliced apart, and was currently being sliced apart. At the world overlord level, This is the Skyrend Heavenheart Mandate. The fusion of spatial energy and the source origin of the sword is able to create a Heavenheart Mandate. Skyrend Heavenheart Mandate is able to directly tear apart a piece of space. Someone exclaimed in shock. Evidently, there were world overlords among the living corpses who acted. They didn't say anything and directly killed the invaders. This was the territory they were protecting. Although they no longer had the ability to think, they still retained their will to kill all invaders with no mercy. Heavenheart Mandates were also known as Heaven's Will. They had already surpassed the boundaries of source origins and were a type of transcendent energy, a brand new type of energy. In the void flames suddenly appeared, directly rushing into the bodies of everyone, incinerating them. Many people screamed as their bodies were instantly incinerated into nothingness. It was an extremely miserable sight. Another person acted. This person was also a world overlord who had comprehended a Heavenheart Mandate. In the blink of an eye, countless screams rang out as countless experts died. The expressions of the experts from the heavenly deity race all changed. "Young Master Wang, save me!" Someone screamed, pleading for help from the experts from the heavenly deity race. If it wasn't for the fact that they didn't act, transcendence would still be as weak as grass and wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike. This was because there were several world overlords among the crowd. How could they fight against them? Even Empyreans wouldn't be able to do so. Terror spread. Everything happened in just a short span of a few breaths of time. 1/3 of the experts had already died, their deaths extremely miserable. Before Wang Yi, the ancient bell radiated an incomparably resplendent light that enveloped him, preventing him from being corroded. His eyes were tightly closed, as though he was communicating with the ancient bell. An instant later, a terrifying might radiated from the ancient bell as bell chimes rang out. Many people felt their souls trembling as they saw the ancient bell flying out. The light from it directly enveloped a world overlord zombie. Boom! The ancient bell flew out by itself, directly enveloping that zombie. That world overlord zombie stepped out as his Heavenheart Mandate erupted forth. Boundless Heavenheart might blasted into the ancient bell, causing intense rumbling sounds to ring out. However, it didn't shatter at all. The light he shot out grew even more resplendent, capable of destroying everything. Beams of light enveloped that world overlord zombie, and from within, a will that didn't belong to Wang Yi erupted forth. That was a Heavenheart Mandate. It controlled the ancient bell and divine weapons to unleash their power, tearing that world overlord zombie apart. Not only Wang Yi acted, the experts from the various heavenly deity races all acted as well, taking out their supreme divine weapons and unleashing unfathomable might. For a period of time, the might radiating from this desolate area caused even Empyreans to feel fear in their hearts. Qin Wendian stood among the crowd. At this moment, he naturally wouldn't be so foolish as to head out alone. That would simply be courting death. These zombies didn't care who he was, whether he came from the supreme ancient immortal realms or Azure Mystic. To invaders, they only had a single thought in their minds. That was to slaughter them. Although his combat prowess was extraordinary, he didn't have the confidence to fight against world overlords. World overlords were characters on a completely different level. The higher one's cultivation base was, the more terrifying the disparity between major realms would be. Every step they took was like the distance between heaven and earth. Every step they took was a qualitative leap. Let alone him, even the world overlord's supreme divine weapons of these experts from the heavenly deity race would find it hard to contend against them. Qin Wendian naturally understood that right now, these divine weapons were no longer under the control of those Empyreans from the heavenly deity race. Although it seemed like they were unleashing the might of the divine weapons themselves, in truth, there were other mysteries behind it. Qin Wendian guessed that most probably when they came here, these divine weapons had already been tempered using special methods. There were extremely powerful characters from the supreme ancient immortal realms who could control them from afar to unleash shocking might. The foundations of the heavenly deity race in the supreme ancient immortal realms were simply too deep. No matter what methods they had, it wouldn't be surprising at all. The ancient bell in Wang Yi's hand unleashed the might of the great Tao, destroying everything, killing the world overlord-level zombies. Wang Yi continued his slaughter, destroying everything in his path. There was also a white feathered fan that waved about, causing the entire space to freeze. After that, the frozen zombies shattered into pieces, resembling snowflakes, vanishing like smoke. Clearly, this wasn't something that could be accomplished with Empyrean source energy. It was also world energy, the might of heaven heart mandates. As for that winged expert from the heavenly deity race, a pair of wings appeared on his back, intertwining with his original wings. He also had a divine spear in his hand. With a flap of his wings, he instantly appeared before an expert and pierced through him, instantly slashing that expert into pieces. The zombies fell unceasingly under his wings and spear. These experts from the heavenly deity race were all going all out. A great battle of mutual destruction erupted. Qin Wendian continued to hide in the crowd. In the surroundings, there were experts dying unceasingly. The number of zombies also decreased unceasingly until they completely vanished. As for the experts who came from the outside world, more than half of them had already died. This was truly terrifying. What place is this exactly? Wang Yi's expression was unsightly. Although he displayed his divine might, he still felt a sense of defeat. Given how confident he was, not long after he entered the ancient battlefield, he already had to borrow external forces to fight. He had no way to fight on his own. This made him feel very uncomfortable. This desolate land might very well have once belonged to a transcendent power. There were already many world overlords whose souls hadn't dissipated. If it was in the past, there would most probably be a group of world overlords here. From this, one could very well imagine how terrifying this transcendent power was. Although he felt a sense of defeat in his heart, there was also anticipation in his heart. He continued moving deeper into the depths of the desolate land. On the way, they encountered many zombies, but all of them were killed by them. After several days, they finally arrived at a certain place. When they stared at the scene before them, great waves of shock rose up in their hearts. From afar, in their field of vision, there was an ancient palace that had long been dilapidated for an unknown number of years. It had already been reduced to ruins. Occasionally, there would be a few incomparably resplendent stone pillars that were still radiating light. However, their radiance had already dimmed. On one of the stone pillars, a figure with only half a body could be seen. He was clad in an incomparably luxurious golden robe and was like a lofty supreme king. However, only half of his body remained, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. What was even more terrifying was that in front of this supreme character, in the air, a figure quietly floated there. His wings flickered as the radiance radiating from him illuminated the heavens and earth. His wings blotted out the sky, resembling the laws of the great Tao of heaven and earth. This person was like a true heavenly deity. Chapter 1719. Upon seeing that figure floating in the air, many people involuntarily turned their gazes to the winged expert from the heavenly deity race. Although the wings of the two of them couldn't be compared, there were still some similarities. Both were wings of the great Tao and shone with boundless runic light, resembling the laws of the great Tao. Could it be someone from the same race? That winged expert was an expert from the heavenly deity race of the supreme ancient immortal realms. The name of this race was the winged god race. Their wings were innately born with the bloodline of heavenly deities flowing in their veins, allowing them to inherit the power of the ancient winged gods. At this moment, that winged expert from the heavenly deity race trembled as a look of incomparable agitation appeared on his face. This caused the eyes of everyone to gleam with sharpness. Could it be that the winged expert was truly someone from his race? That figure floating in the air was actually a heavenly deity who once conquered Azure Mystic. Bzz. A raging wind blew. Yufifan's silhouette flashed as he soared into the air. He stared at the winged expert in the air as he called out, "Descendant of the winged god race, Yufifan, pays my respects to ancestor." After speaking, the wings on his body spread open, resembling the wings of the great Tao. They expanded unceasingly, blotting out the sky, clearly indicating his identity as a member of the winged god race. It has been so many years. Has someone from the supreme ancient immortal realms finally arrived? That figure in the air spoke. He actually still had consciousness and wasn't a zombie. This caused everyone to be greatly shocked. Yu Fifan had an expression of agitation on his face. This was his ancestor, a heavenly deity. Was he actually still alive? Come over. That figure spoke to Yu Fifan. His tone was filled with disdain. Although Yu Fifan was an Empyrean, at this moment, he didn't have the slightest bit of disobedience. This was a true heavenly deity. Yu Fifan's silhouette flashed and appeared before the figure in the air. An expression of agitation could be seen on his face. Heavenly deity, he actually encountered his ancestor. Before he came here, he had a trace of hope, but he didn't expect that it would actually become a reality. Everything in ancient Azure Mystic will be brought back to the supreme ancient immortal realms. It will no longer belong to your Azure Mystic. So what if he buried the heavens and earth to protect Azure Mystic? Ultimately, all his efforts would be for naught. The obsessions you guys have accumulated over the countless years would also turn into nothingness. That heavenly deity spoke. His voice was filled with the vicissitudes of time, like he was speaking from the primordial era. Although some of the hegemonic powers of the supreme ancient Azure Mystic had the records, Although there were records of the hegemonic powers of the supreme ancient immortal realms, it was all to, but now everything was finally appeared. Back then, when your heavenly deity race from the supreme ancient immortal realms descended, the things you failed to accomplish will still not be accomplished today. The king's body that only had half a body left spoke. It was like he hasn't spoken for a very long time. When he spoke, his voice was filled with the vicissitudes of time, but there was still a powerful aura of disdain within. Ha! That heavenly deity laughed uproariously. Could it be that you didn't see the supreme ancient immortal realms descending here? I will borrow the bodies of my clansmen to destroy everything, purifying the souls of the dead. After speaking, a resplendent light cascaded onto Yu Fifan from the winged god race. A terrifying mantle will gushed into the center of his brows as holy light illuminated the entire space. Yu Fifan's aura was undergoing a transformation. The world of the great Tao seemed to want to fuse into his body. Not a living person. This scene caused everyone to suddenly understand that this expert from the heavenly deity race wasn't a living person. He was borrowing the strength of his descendants to fight for him. That supreme body of his could dissipate into nothingness, entering Yu Fifan's body. As for those zombies, even if they are given new life, who can obstruct me? An incomparably tyrannical voice rang out from Yu Fifan's mouth. It was like Yu Fifan was no longer under his control, but was controlled by his ancestor, a heavenly deity. Are there any of you from Azure Mystic? At this moment, that powerful existence that only had half a body left spoke. His voice seemed to originate from the void. It wasn't transmitted through his mouth. Clearly, he was different from the other zombies. He also had his own consciousness. The experts here glanced over, but no one spoke. All of them were from the supreme ancient immortal realms. Only Qin Wenyan was from Azure Mystic. Qin Wenyan was hesitating right now. The consciousnesses of these people seemed to be able to control others. He didn't want to be controlled by others. If that was the case, would he still be him? He is the same as me. He has long died. Right now, the only thing that remains is his will. His physical body has already been destroyed and his body is rotting away. Even if you want to seize his body, it's impossible. Only if you are willing to cooperate would you be able to borrow the body of others to fight. That half-body king continued. Stop dreaming. Ancient Azure Mystic has already been destroyed, yet you still have delusions in your heart. The descent of the supreme ancient immortal realms means that everything has ended. I will turn Azure Mystic into dust, turning it into the dust of history. The heavenly deity from the winged god race coldly spoke, exuding an incomparably tyrannical aura. He was currently familiarizing himself with Yu Fifan's body. Yu Feifan's entire demeanor was undergoing a transformation. This caused the other experts from the heavenly deity race to feel envy. This was a heavenly deity ancestor. They were also willing to sacrifice their bodies to fight against him. They would surely be able to gain some insights. Earlier, that heavenly deity had already said that it was impossible to forcefully seize the body of someone else. Seems like the time isn't right. Even if I die, the hope of Azure Mystic won't be extinguished. That heavenly deity sighed, filled with boundless emotions. Senior, I'm someone from Azure Mystic. At this moment, Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he walked out from the crowd, arriving before the heavenly deity as he spoke. He was initially hesitating, but the words spoken by that heavenly deity from the winged god race stimulated him. These experts from the heavenly deity race were all buried here, and they all had an intense hatred for Azure Mystic. If this heavenly deity stepped out, he would truly destroy Azure Mystic. He had to stop this no matter what. Hence, he no longer hesitated. Emichim? Yu Feifan stared at Qin Wentian. His expression was extremely sharp. Right now, he was already a heavenly deity. That heavenly deity also stared at Qin Wentian as he asked, "In this place, are you the only person from Azure Mystic?" Qin Wentian nodded. For countless years, Azure Mystic has been sealed. But now, the seal has loosened and countless people from the supreme ancient immortal realms came here to search for the ancient ruins. They found their way here, and all of them are from the supreme ancient immortal realms. What about you? Why are you here? That heavenly deity asked again. I'm someone from Azure Mystic. After that, I entered the supreme ancient immortal realms for cultivation. Because of the great changes in the world, after I returned, I unified Azure Mystic and temporarily became the overlord of Azure Mystic. A few days ago, I found out about the world-ending battle in ancient Azure Mystic and came here to investigate the secrets of ancient Azure Mystic. Qin Wentian spoke. That heavenly deity stared at him. Fine, I will borrow your body for a while. Don't resist my will. That heavenly deity spoke. Qin Wentian nodded and walked over. After that, a powerful will gushed into Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness. Very soon, Qin Wentian felt a mysterious energy. His will was still present, and it was like what the other party said, there was no sign of him being possessed. My will fuse into your will, temporarily becoming one with you. I need to sense your strength, you have to cooperate with me. The other party is controlling a junior of the same race and would surely be very compatible. If you are defeated, you would be in danger. That heavenly deity directly communicated with Qin Wentian through his will. He knew what Qin Wentian wanted to say with a single thought. Qin Wentian replied. Seems like the secret of his strength was about to be revealed to this heavenly deity. However, an ancient person who has already died shouldn't reveal anything. After all, this was a heavenly deity-level existence. His will fused together with that heavenly deity's will, guiding the other party to familiarize himself with his strength. Very soon, Qin Wentian's aura also changed. His eyes gleamed with an incomparably terrifying light. Are you really someone from Azure Mystic? You are not from the supreme ancient immortal realms? That heavenly deity sensed Qin Wentian's strength and felt some disbelief in Qin Wentian's words. Qin Wentian didn't say anything more. He directly transmitted pieces of memories to this heavenly deity, including the time when he became the overlord of Azure Mystic and fought against the Empyreans from the supreme ancient immortal realms. The battle next might surpass the limits of your body. Don't resist it, or it would be very hard for me to control it. The heavenly deity continued. Qin Wentian nodded. He also wanted to see how powerful a heavenly deity would be in his body. Would it be able to allow him to jump levels for a short period of time? Most probably that would be the case. At this moment, a resplendent light cascaded down on this space. Yu Feifan's wings spread open, resembling the wings of a true heavenly deity. The might of the great Tao gushed forth, and Yu Feifan's eyes gleamed with sharpness. His silhouette flashed as he vanished from his original location. In the next instant, Qin Wentian only felt his body being enveloped by boundless runes of the great Tao. The destructive energy contained within caused him to feel a sense of helplessness. Could Empyreans unleash such might? However, at this moment, the energy in his body suddenly circulated. This wasn't something he could control. His body seemed to vanish from the world, completely vanishing. This feeling was extremely mystical. The boundless killing energy of the great Tao gushed over, but they couldn't touch him at all. He had opened up a space of nothingness by himself. Is this a power that only world overlords can control? A thought appeared in Qin Wentian's heart. He was sensing it. Although this wasn't something he could control and comprehend, he was borrowing the power of his body. This might be extremely useful to his future cultivation, as it could point out a direction for him. With a single thought, he could borrow Qin Wentian's body and use the source origins he comprehended to temporarily form a heaven heart mandate. Although this wasn't something that truly belonged to Qin Wentian, this sort of ability could be said to be heaven-shaking, because the person controlling his body was a heavenly deity. Chapter 1720. Qin Wentian suddenly thought of something. The heavenly talisman realm in the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms seemed to be like this as well. It was situated in a separate space. This was the power of a world overlord, a heaven heart mandate. Naturally, Qin Wentian understood that this wasn't a power he comprehended. Rather, this supremely powerful heavenly deity borrowed his strength to unleash this might. This might was temporary and fake, it wasn't a true heaven heart mandate. After all, he didn't have a world heart. But even so, the might it contained was still extremely terrifying. In addition to the fact that his opponent was a heavenly deity, it would definitely be extremely terrifying. However, that heavenly deity from the winged god race wasn't an ordinary character. He was once a heavenly deity as well. His wings slashed out with the great Tao as boundless killing might of the great Tao bore down on him, lacerating the sky and earth. Even the void was pierced through, there was no way to block it. At this instant, an incomparably resplendent light radiated from Qin Wentian. This wasn't pure light energy, it transformed into millions and millions of motes of light, each containing a fearsome destructive might. Everywhere they passed by, everything was destroyed. The experts from afar frantically retreated. This was because the control of heavenly deities was extremely strong. They didn't allow the shockwaves of the battle to reach them. If not, they would definitely die for sure. Yu Fifan flapped his gigantic wings, causing the heavens and earth to howl in rage. A powerful Tao might that could annihilate everything manifested. A beam of light shot out, directly penetrating through the boundless killing intent, transforming into the sharpest weapon in the world, shooting towards Qin Wentian. Winged God Slash. This was a supremely powerful attack of the winged god race. It could penetrate through everything, destroying everything in its path. In an instant, it could destroy Qin Wentian's body. Bzz. An incomparably resplendent light radiated from Qin Wentian, transforming into a supremely powerful sword domain that resembled a heaven-destroying sword formation, enveloping him within. Millions upon millions of swords shot out at the same time as boundless energy in the air transformed into sword intent that gushed forth. However, that figure still continued to slash out, slamming into a resplendent light screen. This light screen contained boundless great Tao energy and was able to block the wing god's slash for a moment. When the wing slashed down, Qin Wentian's silhouette had already vanished. Bzz, a beam of light flashed. Qin Wentian felt that even his eyes couldn't keep up with the speed of his opponent. Right now, he only felt a little dizzy as his body felt extremely uncomfortable. It was hard for him to adapt to such an intense battle. His consciousness gradually wavered as he felt his body moving at a terrifying speed, clashing against each other. As for the spectators, they were all dumbfounded. They saw the two of them fighting from the ground to the air, and from the air to the horizons. Beams of intense light unceasingly radiated, making it hard for them to see the movements of the two of them clearly. The speed of their attacks had reached an inconceivable level. Let alone vision, even immortal senses wouldn't be able to capture their movements. The winged god race was proficient in fast attacks, and their attacks were unparalleled. They wouldn't stop until they killed their opponents. Do you have any techniques that are compatible with your attribute energy? Your attribute energy isn't suitable for me, but my opponent is perfectly compatible with it. I need some special techniques. A voice directly rang out in Qin Wentian's mind. At this moment, Qin Wentian couldn't care too much. He sent many memories into the consciousness of his opponent. Right now, he already believed that this was a dead man. Since this was just a strand of his will, there was no need to worry about him leaking anything. Let alone the fact that his life was now in the hands of his opponent. His opponent was a heavenly deity, and it was a heavenly deity that was compatible with the descendant of his race. Boom! A terrifying attack blasted into Qin Wentian's body. His body was almost penetrated as a terrifying bloody wound appeared. Qin Wentian was stunned as intense pain radiated from his body. What's going on? He felt his body coming to a halt. He glanced at his body that was on the verge of shattering. He didn't understand what happened earlier. Why was he actually struck by that attack and was almost destroyed? I understand. However, at this moment, a sigh appeared in his mind. It was like an ancient sigh. Careful! Qin Wentian called out in shock. He saw a beam of light shooting over. That heavenly deity naturally wouldn't care about his sigh and directly slashed over. The radiance of the great Tao cascaded downwards as a pair of wings blotted out the sky. After that, the wings transformed into an all-annihilating energy that slashed down from the sky, wanting to shatter Qin Wentian's body. Come! The voice rang out in Qin Wentian's mind once more. After that, he felt his body suffering from a destructive attack. But at this moment, Qin Wentian's body transformed into an incomparably gigantic ancient tree, blotting out the sky and radiating a holy light. The winged god frenziedly slashed down, wanting to cleave Qin Wentian's ancient tree into two. But at this moment, a terrifying attack shot out from Qin Wentian's mind. This was a soul attack that directly penetrated through the wings of the great Tao, enveloping his opponent's tyrannical defense. With a thunderous boom, his opponent was flung through the air. In the next instant, boundless destructive energy directly penetrated through Yu Fifen's body. Yu Fifen had a look of terror and despair on his face. Arg! A scream of misery rang out. Yu Fifen's body directly shattered as blood rained down from the sky. He was directly killed. Qin Wentian felt like he was about to faint. His heart pounded wildly. He succeeded. He killed his opponent. His body rapidly recovered, gradually becoming as good as new, like he had never been injured before. Such recovery speed caused him to involuntarily sigh in admiration. He wouldn't be able to do something like this. How can this be possible? An illusory figure appeared. It was none other than that extremely arrogant heavenly deity. He borrowed the body of his descendant, and although it couldn't be said to be a perfect fusion, he was extremely familiar with it and could unleash immense power. It wasn't something the heavenly deity who borrowed Qin Wentian's body could compare to. But even so, he was actually defeated. An Empyrean from the winged god race wouldn't lose to Qin Wentian. In that case, didn't this mean that the heavenly deity who controlled Yu Fifen's body was defeated by the heavenly deity who controlled Qin Wentian's body? You are someone from Azure Mystic? That heavenly deity turned his gaze to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's expression flickered. A voice filled with the vicissitudes of life rang out from his mouth. Your defeat isn't unjust. He understood his opponent's thoughts. He knew why he was defeated. However, he also knew that his opponent's defeat wasn't unjust. It wasn't his victory, but rather, there was a disparity between the bodies he borrowed. Although Yu Fifen was in existence from the heavenly deity race, his potential was still far inferior to Qin Wentian's. In addition, the ancient prophecy from back then would become reality. His opponent naturally wouldn't be unjust. But could it be that he is stronger than a descendant of my winged god race? The imposing voice of the heavenly deity seemed to be filled with reluctance. So what if you are the overlord of Azure Mystic? Ancient Azure Mystic has long been destroyed, and the heavenly deity race would eventually conquer everything in the supreme ancient immortal realms. When this battlefield reappeared, everything would be turned to dust. Everything that those existences protected would all be turned into nothingness. You still don't understand. You will never understand. The vicissitude voice rang out from Qin Wentian's mouth once more. He then continued, I once said that Azure Mystic will forever be Azure Mystic. The things you all failed to do in the past, you all will never be able to do it in the future. Now, this battle is the proof of everything. It is also a new beginning. History will never change. Ah, foolish. Back then, he buried this entire battlefield. Did he think that he would be able to stop the footsteps of the heavenly deity race? He allowed everyone to revive, becoming the living dead of this world. What is he waiting for? Just like what you said, history will never change. Azure Mystic will eventually be destroyed. This is an inevitability of history. An expert from the heavenly deity race spoke with arrogance. He was buried here and hated that person to the bone. He also hated Azure Mystic to the core. He had always been guessing that the reason why the heavenly deity buried Azure Mystic and allowed the dead to revive was because he wanted to borrow the hands of the dead to protect this place. However, would he be able to do so? Now, the supreme ancient immortal realms have already arrived. Time will prove everything. The imperishable Heaven Lord will continue to protect this land. His body, flesh and blood have already fused with this land. He will protect it forever, undying and imperishable. Qin Wentian's voice was incomparably solemn, like the strongest faith in the world. The supreme existence they believed in was none other than the imperishable Heaven Lord, the Heaven Lord who once led them in battle. However, you won't be able to see all of this. Today you will completely vanish into thin air. Qin Wentian spoke again. A formless, terrifying attack blasted through the air, slamming into the illusory figure in the air, causing a thunderous boom to echo out. The other party roared in rage, I'm unwilling. Boom. A powerful formless energy dissipated, gradually turning into nothingness. The will of a heavenly deity was destroyed, completely vanishing from this world, never to exist again. Countless years have passed. He didn't dissipate because he wanted to see the future of this world. But now, he thought that he would be the one to witness it and obtain a new life through a different method. However, he was wrong. What welcomed him wasn't a new life but destruction. Senior. Right now, Qin Wentian felt extremely weak. His entire person felt like he was about to collapse. This was simply too unbearable. Given his body, he unleashed a power that didn't belong to him. This was an overloading battle. If it wasn't for the fact that his body was extremely sturdy, he would be in danger of collapsing. MHM, the other party replied. An illusory figure appeared. This was the will of the heavenly deity leaving Qin Wentian's body. His countenance was filled with the vicissitudes of time. Even after countless years, he was still here. When he looked at Qin Wentian, his gaze was filled with warmth and a smile, as though he was extremely happy. It was like he was looking at his own junior. Finally, you are here. A voice rang out from his mouth, causing Qin Wentian to start. He inclined his head and stared at the heavenly deity as a resplendent light gleamed in his eyes. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.